problem that the Phillies have right now.
Yeah, I know. Obviously, yesterday they made the move to get Hoskins activated. They sent Bohm down. So let's kind of get into that, Mike, because what is the future for Alec Bohm? It's not as a third baseman. You got Hoskins at first. Can he play left field? Are you intrigued by what the Phillies do with him when he goes to the minors?
Well, you have to find a position for him, right? Because he struggled at third base. He struggled at first base, but you've got to get him right as a hitter, first of all. I would say the biggest thing that I've seen from Alec Bohm this year is that the ball does not jump off his bat when he makes contact. He is a big guy, but he just does not hit with power, and that is a problem. And him going down to the minors really highlights another problem that the Phillies have had is where are the Phillies' young players? Where are the guys this organization has developed? You look at successful teams. They have 4 or 5 guys that their organization has developed and turned into good major league players. Look at the Phillies' position players. Hoskins is the only one right now. This organization has just not developed any players the past 5, 6, 7 years. And that's why they're in the predicament that they're in now. And, to turn it around, they're going to have to start doing that on a more consistent basis. But they missed on everybody. And if Bohm turns out to be a miss, boy, that's big trouble.
Yeah. Now, if you're the Phillies, when you send him to Lehigh, are you putting him at third, or are you saying go learn how to play the outfield? Are you sticking him at first base? How are you handling this demotion?
I think you got to play him at the corners right now. If you want to try the outfield position, you can do that and start with that in spring training of next year. My biggest thing is, and I see the games, he wants to play well. There's no way his struggles on defense, his struggles at the plate, I would worry about his confidence right now. The number one mission that I would have with Bohm in AAA is just go back, get your confidence, learn to have fun playing baseball again, and just see if you can, turn it around and get something positive out of these final 5 or 6 weeks. And then if you want to talk big time position changes, you can address that in spring training next year. I don't think it's fair to him now to say, go play left field tonight and stuff like that. You can do that in February. I just want to see that kid go down there and just start to have some fun, relax, clear his head, and hopefully get on a better path that can get him back to the major leagues. But because you have an issue right now where, these numbers that he's put up this season, real questions about his baseball future.
Now, your must-win column this week was that the Phillies' playoff hopes hinged on the weekend. They won 2 out of 3, so they are just 5 back. Or I say just 5 back. They are 5 back in the race. But do you now feel that they have a better shot at the wild card 5 back?
Yeah, I don't see them catching any of the wild card teams. There's a lot of teams in between them and that second wild card. I don't see them catching the Braves either. I think the Phillies' goal right now is they finish the season with those 3 games in Atlanta, right? Get to Atlanta with maybe a chance to, win the division. So get to Atlanta within 3 games and then play it out. It's very difficult to make up these games. The Braves' schedule gets much tougher. I know they play the San Francisco Giants a lot. Now they've got the New York Yankees coming up, but we've seen what the schedule means nothing because the Phillies go into Arizona and get swept by Arizona. So you never know what the schedule is, and you never know what type of team you're facing. A team that might be bad might be playing well now, as opposed to a team that with a better record might be, slumping or have thrown it in the season. So you can't always tell by the schedule. But I thought they needed to win 3 or 4. I thought they needed to go 3-1, counting last Thursday's game against Arizona. They went 2-2. I thought yesterday was an absolute must-win. After the Braves won, you couldn't fall 6 back. So you're 5 back. You're hanging on by a thread. I think your goal now is get to Atlanta with a chance to, win the division, and that means being 3 back or less.
Give me the Mets. Are they done?
I think the Mets are done. I think they're done. What are they, 6.5 back right now? They just haven't hit the ball all season long. And you're not going to start hitting the ball when you haven't hit for 4 or 5 months. So, bodies in motion tend to stay in motion, right? The first law of physics there. So, the Mets aren't going to – Michael Conforto is having a terrible year. He's going to continue to have a terrible year. The Mets haven't hit all year long. and they're going to continue to struggle with that. So I don't see them as a challenger either. I think the Braves have command. Like I said, there's 6 divisions in baseball. Only 2 division leaders have bigger leads than the Braves. The White Sox and the Brewers. So the Braves have put themselves, they've gotten hot at the right moment, and they put themselves in position to really take charge of this division. And you go back and look at history, if you're 5 up on September 1st or around this time of year, you win the division 99.9% of the time.
Yeah, the 5 game, when I got home, Mike, and I looked at, I couldn't pay attention a lot. I saw they got swept. I wasn't looking at the standings closely. When I looked today, I said 5 back. What happened? I was like, well, the Braves got scorching hot. I guess that's what happened. But you're right. 5 back here, you're in trouble in terms of making those games up. You're running out of time. But they do play the Braves, as you mentioned, late in the year. They got to cut it into about 2 games by the time you're hitting that late September area. We'll see the Phillies pitching. Nola, that game on Saturday. Now, that one I was watching in the car ride home, and that the way they lost that game, for them to come back and win yesterday, I thought was a pretty good sign.
Yeah, they have been resilient all season. They have had some brutal defeats, some tough defeats, and they have come back all season long from those types of defeats. So they are a resilient team. I give them all the credit in the world. They do not quit. They play hard. Sometimes, I know people said last week they don't have any energy. They're not trying. Well, that's what happens in baseball when you don't hit. When you don't hit in baseball, you look like you're listless, just like basketball. When you don't shoot the ball well in basketball, you look terrible. You look like you don't have any energy. Same thing in baseball. They have been a resilient team. I just think they're a flawed team without the talent. And I think they just, they've hit a bad streak. The Braves hit a hot streak. That's how these things go. And I think the Braves right now, too big a lead. Like you said, end the season with 3 games in Atlanta. The goal is to get to those games with a chance to catch the Braves.
Yeah, an unfortunate time for you to go cold, them to get hot. You talk about shooting. Are you enamored by the latest Ben Simmons shooting video?
I don't know. I understand. Do other NBA players put videos out like this?
I don't know who does it to. I don't know who keeps putting these up for him. Does he order someone to do it? Is someone secretly doing it to him? Do you think he's ordering someone to put them out?
I don't know what is going on, but why every time on my Twitter feed do I see him running pick and rolls against 5'2" guys, going half speed? Do other NBA players do this? Maybe they do. I don't know, but I don't see it.
Today, Mike, he's banging 3 after 3. He's pulling up from the elbow. He's practicing with Maxey. So I don't know if he's like, hey, let me find a popular guy and let me show me working out with him. Maybe that will give me more credibility.
I think it's just crazy. Like I said, I don't see Donovan Mitchell or Dame Lillard or Kevin Durant videos in the Instagram videos of him working out and stuff like that. Again, I think it's almost to the point where I think he's kind of poking some fun at us and trolling us and seeing what kind of reaction he can get. It's just absolutely crazy that we see these videos every year. And let's not be fooled by it. That's the biggest problem because we know when the game starts, he's not pulling up and shooting from 3. It's just not happening. So I don't know why he puts these videos out there, basically.
I guess he does it for that whole, man, if he actually does this, we don't want to give up because, you know what I'm saying? But you're right. I don't know who he orders to do this, but I don't think it helps him out all that much.
Yeah,
right.
I think it would be better if he pulled the Rocky IV, went away to Siberia to train in a barn on shooting, and we didn't see him for 3 months, and then he came back the first exhibition game and buried 5 threes. That should be what he does. What he's doing now is just crazy and just mind-boggling.
Well, he hit the 3 in the game against the Chinese exhibition game, and then he never took another one after that.
Right,
yeah, he went down. A couple new local stories over the weekend. A couple of very prominent high school basketball head coaches called it quits.
Yeah, Tom Farraco of Middle Township, Dave DeWeese of Wildwood Catholic, both deciding to step down last week. 2 of the best coaches in Cape Atlantic League history, 2 of the best coaches in the state, built the programs into state powers. Both guys 63 years old, and the common denominator when I talked to them for the stories, both said the same thing. They don't feel the energy. They don't feel they have the commitment, the passion that they had anymore. So both have stepped down as coach. Farraco at Middle Township, DeWeese at Wildwood Catholic. And just, it won't be the same without those guys around, especially down in Cape May County, and whoever replaces both of them are going to have big shoes to fill. So, yeah, local high school basketball season will look a lot different this winter with those two guys gone.
And speaking of high school sports, the football season starts with a unique event this weekend, man.
Absolutely. I told people that this was the last weekend of summer, right, for me, because we've got high school football, 11 a.m. over in Ocean City, St. Joe versus Northeast Philly, that Battle by the Beach thing. It's a big showcase event. It's going to be a great event over there at Ocean City. A lot of games on Friday starting at 11 a.m., games all day Saturday. Big game Saturday night, Holy Spirit and DeMatha from Washington, D.C., and some games on Sunday. So no better setting for high school football, I think, in New Jersey than Ocean City's football field at 6th and Atlantic, the Ferris wheel overlooking the field, the boardwalk, the beach, and you'll have really about, I think, 10, 11 high school football games this weekend over there at Ocean City, in addition to some other great games. You got Mainland EHT, you got Absegami Hamilton, Oakcrest, Pleasantville. So, yeah, summer's over, and we're kicking off 11 a.m. Friday morning.
Unbelievable. That thing snuck up on everybody pretty quickly. So it's Friday, Saturday, Sunday. You have to buy tickets ahead of time, right?
Right. You do have to buy tickets online. I think it's all sort of digital sale. I think you might be able to show up at the stadium and buy a ticket digitally through your phone and stuff like that. But, yeah, get your tickets ahead of time because I don't think they'll be selling any tickets, quote unquote, at the door over there in Ocean City. So plan ahead.
Mike McGarry from the Press of Atlantic City. Check out his must-win column on Fridays and all his other work over at thepressofatlanticcity.com. All right, Mike, good to see you again, man.
All right, we'll see you later. Thanks a lot. Congratulations on your win, too.
Thank you, brother.
All right.
We don't need Girardi. Just have me in there, right? That's what he said. I have no idea what happened to the Phillies while I was gone. How do you go from 2 up to 5 back? That's almost impossible. Come on. Disappointing, to say the least. Next hour, Phillies, Eagles. Thoughts on that? Now, Josh told me some bizarre conspiracy theory about the Eagles that I have not heard while I was away. You know who's from Jamestown, New York, by the way? I got an answer coming up next. Eagles related. I was in Jamestown for the last 10 days. There's somebody from Jamestown, New York. Do you know who it is? If you don't, stick around. I'll tell you next. Hour 2, me and you. What's up? Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN. I'm your host, Mike Gill, back with you on a Monday. Good to be with you. No Phils tonight. They play Tampa tomorrow. Back in second place firmly with the Mets 7 games back. Phillies 5 games back. I got your Philly stuff coming up with Bob Wankel at 4:40 today. He'll give me the latest on all the Phils on their day off today. We'll talk a lot of Phils extensively with Bob from Crossing Broad as we do every Monday and Friday right here on the Sports Bash. Don't forget, download the free mobile app and message us through your phone. Download the app, open the app, hit the message us button, send your thoughts to the Sports Bash studios of 97.3 ESPN, the Matt Blatt Kia studios. Also, you can text us at 609-403-0973. And, of course, on the video stream, if you're watching live in the comments section of wherever you're watching on YouTube and Twitter. The Eagles played 2 games while I was gone, one of which they were competitive in, the other not so competitive in. Now, this wonky story, Josh, you need to explain to me what you explained to me earlier, because I almost think that you're messing with me. The fact of the matter is this. From what I understand, and I read a lot about this, I was keeping up on this one because it's Eagles, it's not every single day. So I was paying attention to the fact that Jalen Hurts did not play in the game. The thing that I read and was told was that it was some sort of abdominal issue. He had some sort of stomach pain.
So the Adam Schefter report that nobody has refuted is it was a stomach infection. Nick Sirianni
said, the hell is a stomach infection?
So the stomach infection is when either the lining of your stomach or where the esophagus meets the stomach or where the stomach meets the intestines gets infected somehow with either, maybe maybe something gets scarred or cut in there, or maybe you just happen to get some sort of bacteria.
Now, did the question come because I was reading through the transcript of the press conference, and one of the questions, yes, the post-game press conference I have sent to me, and I have Sal Paolantonio.
Yeah, Sal Pal had like 3 questions in a row about this.
Right. He said, Zangaro from NBC said, what happened with Hurts? Mm-hmm. He wasn't feeling great. We put him through the pregame warm-ups. We evaluated him. He's fine. Sal Pal said, did you send him home? No, we sent him to the hospital. Sal Pal says, well, what kind of symptoms did he have? He had pain in his abdomen, which for a guy like that to tell us, he's a tough guy, so it must have been hurting him pretty good.
Right.
Paolantonio then asked, after Hurts was examined in the hospital, did he go home? Sirianni says, I don't know. All right. Skaversky from ABC 6 in Philadelphia says, well, it caught us by surprise because in the pregame he was dancing and spinning, looking like he was feeling great. You're saying he came into the building today before the pregame and he wasn't feeling good. And Sirianni says, yes, that's correct. That's where I guess there's a little bit of a disconnect.
Right. So what happened was before the game, when Flacco got into the game, people couldn't find Hurts anywhere.
Well, real quick, Garofolo from the NFL Network, a little further down in the transcript, said, at the hospital, they ruled out anything serious. What did they leave with you? What did they tell you? Sirianni says, well, it's a stomach infection, a stomach bug. Well, that's a difference. There's a difference between a stomach infection and a stomach bug.
Yes, there's a clear difference. Now, Schefter's report is that it was specifically an infection, and that's why he was told to go home and rest.
For 2 days, though.
Yes.
He did not practice for 2 days after that.
Correct. So he will not be back at practice until these joint practices this week is the working theory.
Well, he missed. The game was on Thursday. 2 days would have been Friday, Saturday. He practiced last night, I thought.
Well, the last time was canceled.
No, it was canceled outdoors, but they still had an indoor practice.
Right, but the fan thing was canceled.
Correct. But I'm saying the outdoor practice at the link was canceled, but they still had an indoor practice because Sirianni spoke last night.
Correct.
And from that transcript that I have here, he said he's resting his body as you would with any illness. So he's saying it's an illness.
Well, an illness can be an infection because when you get an infection, it does cause a lot of side effects. As I was saying on the weekend, I say in part tongue in cheek, I am the foremost expert on GI issues.
Great.
On sports radio.
Well, he says, you are. That's why you're here right now. Sirianni said he went through the walkthrough yesterday, recovering his body, and obviously he was out there and slinging it around today at practice.
Right.
So he practiced yesterday,
right.
And he went through the walkthrough on Saturday.
But you have to be careful because the main side effect of any stomach infection is dehydration. That is one of the biggest side effects. And as a result, intense dehydration can make you dizzy, can cause organ issues, so on and so forth.
Well, this whole thing's bizarre.
It is bizarre.
So so you told me an even more bizarre story.
So on the Eagles post-game show that a lot of us watch on NBC Sports Philadelphia, there had been throughout the night a conspiracy theory running around online saying that this was all a scam, that the Hurts isn't really sick. The Eagles are just trying to find an excuse not to play him. Then
you don't need an excuse not to play him.
Basically, that they were
lying. You don't
lying.
need an excuse not to play him.
They were lying.
It's a preseason game.
Right.
There's no excuse. We decided not to play him.
Right.
You don't need an excuse. There's no conspiracy theory here.
So then Seth Joyner got up on the post-game show and said that the Eagles are lying about Hurts, that he's not really sick. That
Why would they need to lie?
Because Seth says, I watched him go through warm-ups. So that means that
it is bizarre. I will say that. It is bizarre that he went through the warm-ups, he's spinning and dancing. But that being said, why the Eagles don't owe anybody anything other than to say we just decided not to play him.
Right. Why would they make up him going to the hospital? Why would Schefter report they went to the hospital?
Why would they? If they made it up, why? I mean, you're really saying to the guy, hey, we need you to go to the hospital and we need the hospital to collaborate the story?
That's what I was saying on Friday.
Who the hell would actually believe such a thing?
Well, apparently Seth Joyner did.
Yeah, but Seth Joyner did, but nobody else could believe that.
Well, nobody debated him about it on the postgame show. They just kind of moved on from it.
I need to see that video.
So then I get Pete Thompson joining me on Fridays, happy hour with PT.
Yep.
And he says that he doesn't like that my perspective, that I think that this idea that it was a conspiracy is wrong, and that I was too close to the situation because I've also had GI tract problems.
So Pete Thompson believes in the conspiracy theory that suggests that they fakely sent him to the hospital.
Yes, and so does Billy Schweim and Scott McHale in Saturday's Locker Room. So I'm arguing with all three of them this weekend.
Well, Schweim doesn't surprise me.
Pete was surprising.
Pete would be surprising. Schweim not surprising.
Now, the funny thing is the two people who agreed with my perspective on Friday were the two people who were actually covering the game, that being Andrew DeCecco and Jeff Kerr.
Yeah, I'd have to take their side. There's not 1% of me that believes in that conspiracy theory. Not one. And that's on top of the fact that I'm here admitting that it's bizarre, the whole situation, that they're saying it was an infection or a bug and that he was spinning and dancing and all that stuff.
Listen, how many weeks did you see me come in here when I was feeling like death at times? And I was still working through. You remember that?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I'm saying, but like
you can still do stuff with these problems.
It's just a preseason game. Here's the difference. Here's the problem. Some people, the Billy Schweims of the world, God bless them, love the guy, but they believe in their heart of hearts that the preseason games matter. The Eagles and everybody else with half a brain would tell you otherwise. The preseason games don't matter. They don't want him to play in that game. They don't need a manufactured reason for him not to play. So any reason that comes up that says, you don't have to play in this game, all right, you're out. Your stomach hurts a little bit, you're out. Now, I guess the questions start to become, well, this guy's supposed to be the leader. He's supposed to be this, that's what everybody raves about with him. So are you questioning his leadership ability that he doesn't try to gut it out in a preseason game? That's preposterous.
Well, if you believe what Sirianni said, Sirianni made it sound like the Hurts was going to try to play, and they told him, no, go to the hospital.
What are they trying? So now what are they doing? Are they trying to pump up the allure that he's like Willis Reed in a preseason game, for Christ's sakes? I mean, come on. Dude, how could somebody actually believe that?
Because the internet's a strange place.
Well, forget the internet. You're a real human being. That you just said that Billy, Scooter, and Pete Thompson all believe that.
Yeah, that's what I was dealing with this weekend.
Well, so this was an actual conversation that some people believe that the Eagles had to come up with a fake story to hold Hurts out of the game instead of just saying, now, was he scheduled to play? That I don't know. Was he scheduled to play?
Well, from what I understand, again, I'm basing on what Sirianni was saying and what the reports were, that everything that I heard from the Eagles radio network to the television broadcast, you got Howard Eskin on the radio, Spadaro on the sideline. Everyone was claiming that the plan was for Hurts to play.
Okay.
And that they wanted to get him and Devonta Smith reps.
Okay.
Sirianni said after the game.
Yeah, because Flacco looked terrible.
Right. Well, now part of that was because the other thing that Sirianni said that basically when they realized that Hurts wasn't going to play, they didn't need to start all the offensive linemen.
See, that I don't understand.
That was weird.
I don't understand why you wouldn't want those guys to get the reps. But again, it goes back to they don't find importance in this, because what did Sirianni say last night? That tells you everything you need to know.
About the joint practices.
Because he was asked the question. With Hurts not able to go, he's not playing on Friday, by the way. I got that for you right now. Not that I have that on any authority. I don't think you're going to see Hurts in the game on Friday. And here's why. His answer was this. He said... here we go. He said, we're going to have 2 really good practices against the Jets. So that's something we're going to continue to evaluate. So essentially, he was saying that the 2 practices against the Jets are essentially equivalents of preseason games.
Right, because what they were explaining over the weekend, and I was watching NFL Network, me and my football obsession, they were saying that...
I never think to ever turn on NFL Network. I don't know why. I just don't.
Try it out sometime. Do something a little different with your life. How about that? Experiment.
I'll try it.
Spend like 20 minutes of your life. Give it a shot. But the players who work at NFL Network, they talk about how what they love about joint practices is that the coaches can plan scenarios like 3rd and 7 in the red zone, or 1st and 20 on your own side of the field. Like, they can literally plan certain scenarios.
Right, because you might not ever get 3rd down and 4 in a game.
Correct.
But you can say it's 3rd down and 4 in practice.
Right. So, like, Sirianni can go to Belichick last week and Robert Saleh this week and say, hey, I really want to play this scenario out so I can get my guys reps in these scenarios.
Right. So he says, like I'm saying, the practices and the preseason games and the joint practices are weighed a little heavier than a walkthrough, a lot heavier than that. So he essentially puts the preseason game and the joint practices on the same level.
Correct.
Right? Because just what he said, why would a preseason game be more important than a practice against, one's a game, one's a practice? You're still doing the same thing. You're playing against another team in a game-like situation. Like, they put that, when they do those joint practices, it's essentially a game situation. It's just not in front of anybody.
Correct.
Hey, it's going to be 3rd and 5 with 2 minutes left in the game. Let's play it out. Right? They do everything. They can control the settings, though.
And that's the big part with the word you just used. They can control it. And that's why the coaches like it, because the coaches want to have specific film and tape. They talk about this on Hard Knocks every year. The coaches want specific tape on specific scenarios so they can judge the players on those scenarios. Because guess what? If a player can have a good day of practice, but he may not have a good week in scenarios.
Now, Hurts went 3 for 7 in the first game.
2 of those were drops, by the way.
For 54 yards,
and
42%.
One was a throwaway because according to NFL and Next Gen Stats, in the first game, he was blitzed on 6 of the 7 dropbacks he had.
Interesting. Pittsburgh sending the house at the kid in the first preseason game.
That is correct.
Right.
That's Mike Tomlin.
So I guess the question would be, 3 of 7, did you see enough from Jalen Hurts to say, I don't want to see him in another preseason game? And, of course, people would say, no. Most people would say, no, I want to see him play a preseason game. And Brandon Graham said it today. They are putting a heightened importance on getting to the regular season healthy. So my opinion and my prediction would be that you will not see the Eagles starters play on Friday.
I think it's fair. I don't know if that's going to happen or not, because I know what the other part of this was Sirianni said about the young players. He wants young players to get as many reps as possible because he feels it's more important for them than the veterans.
Yeah, I mean, that makes a lot of sense.
That's why Devonta Smith had so much playing time.
Well, do you want to see Devonta Smith play more?
Only if Hurts is out there.
Well, you're not going to get Hurts.
Well, then I don't want Devonta out there.
And the offensive line, you're not going to get the offensive line.
I only want the offensive line if all of them are out there.
Yeah, I don't think you're going to get them. I don't think, and they didn't play anybody on defense the other night, and they got Rochambeau'd by New England.
Yeah, they literally had the 2, 3, and 4th teamer guys in there.
Yeah, but I don't have a problem. Like, I'm over this whole preseason. Like, I don't need preseason. We didn't see any preseason games last year. So I'm over the necessity of playing preseason games. The coaches don't care. I don't care. I don't need to see any preseason action anymore.
Well, some people would argue that there was no preseason and it was sloppy first few weeks of the NFL season.
Right, but my point is nobody else is playing preseason games either.
Well, Andy Reid is. Andy Reid had his whole starting unit out there for almost a full half.
Well, are they going to play next week?
They have one more game, yes. So for one game, he at least had his starters out there for almost the entire half.
Right, but I mean, the Eagles played Hurts for a couple series in the first one.
Right, but the theory out there is you want to have that dress rehearsal before the season.
Now, that really hasn't happened for a couple of years now, though, right? These teams, like, not all the teams, but, like, the Rams haven't played anybody in the preseason since McVay has taken over.
Well, McVay says he doesn't value the preseason at all.
Right. A lot of these coaches are in the same boat, though, where they don't want – I don't know that they don't value. I just don't think they want guys getting hurt.
McVay was explaining on Hard Knocks last year that he didn't care that there was no preseason game.
How is the Hard Knocks?
I think Hard Knocks this year sucks.
Really? I watched the first episode.
With the Ezekiel Elliott spending half the episode wrapping a gift for Dak Prescott.
Yeah, and then now I've been away. So now is it worth me going back?
It's worth you going back so you can just talk about it. But I wouldn't invest like a lot of time in it. It's this. First of all, I think Mike McCarthy is the boringest coach who curses on planet Earth. The dude tries to curse to act like he's interesting and intense. And it's like, dude, you got nothing for me. His relationship with Dak Prescott, these 2 episodes, is so awkward. And furthermore, the fact that they spent the majority of the first 2 episodes focusing on star players and waited until halfway into the second episode to focus on a non-star player, and that non-star player was Ben Dinucci.
I saw the preview for next week when I was watching the first one, and it's Dinucci in the film room, like making fun of like the video or putting his like. I said, of all people, how the hell is Dinucci the class clown?
Dude,
he's got some flipping nerve.
Dude,
to be the
Dinucci
class
gets
clown.
so much film time. He's getting so much coverage in that second episode.
Well, I guess he figures my days are numbered. I might as well try to get picked up by something else.
Maybe a reality TV
Exactly.
show.
That's what I mean. Like maybe Love Island or
Bachelor?
Bachelor in Paradise. I don't know. What's he look like? I haven't seen him.
I mean, he's got a goatee, I think.
What the hell does that mean?
I mean, I don't know.
You got a goatee. Are you going to be on The Bachelor?
I mean, I personally think I'm better looking than Ben Dinucci. Some people might disagree with that.
Glenn from EHT on the text board says, Pete Thompson took it so far as to say that the Eagles have connections at the hospital that would go along with the ruse.
That was part of Pete's claim, yes.
I am utterly shocked by Pete Thompson's proclamation there. Seriously, he really thinks that the Eagles, of course they have connections at the hospital, by the way. I mean, that's obvious. But you think they went out of their way to sell the hospital. Can you please get on board with us on this? We need to set the appearance that he showed up to the hospital. Really?
Yeah.
What right. Can somebody please, if you were on the side that the Eagles tried to collaborate this story, what is the gain here? What is the gain?
To me, there's nothing to gain.
That is irresponsible, though, by Joyner to throw that out there and nobody to question. You know, Didinger didn't. Nobody.
Well, Didinger, they had him on the picture when Seth was implying this.
So Seth wasn't on the set.
No, Seth was on the set, but Didinger was sitting next to him. So you know how they had the screenshot where they're both in the picture at the same time. Didinger is too busy doing whatever he's doing.
So he's not listening.
He's not even listening. Like I legitimately think if Danny Palmel's followed up with Didinger when Seth said what he said, Didinger would have actually had to say, I don't know what he said. I think Didinger literally was checked out at that point in the post-game show.
That's a bad job that nobody challenged him there because it's preposterous. Does anybody out there listening actually think that is possible?
I think the other problem is that there was no Barkan on the post-game show. It was Danny Palmel's. I feel like if Barkan was there, he would have immediately jumped on it. But Danny Palmel's was just like, and we're just going to move on, Hey, here's Nick Sirianni coming up to the podium. It's like, no one's going to say anything about this?
Yeah, George is watching on YouTube. He says they have to play the starters. They haven't had anyone out there. Look, George, I imagine that we would all like to say we would like to see the starters, but realistically, we saw Sam Bradford go 10 for 10. We thought he was going to be the MVP of the league, and playing in that preseason game means nothing. It means nothing. It's just like when you see a team, I say this all the time, you see a team play really good on Sunday. Oh, they're playing really well. And the next week, you're like, they just won last week. They look so impressive. Whatever happens on one Sunday doesn't carry over to another Sunday. Whatever you do in that preseason doesn't translate. Here's the difference, George. And I'm going to assume you're an older gentleman. I could be wrong. Maybe you're a younger guy. When we were growing up, they didn't have joint practices that they emulated games. And now that they have these joint practices, right? They have these joint practices that essentially replace the preseason games. So preseason games have now become uncontrolled scrimmages that you can get younger players more snaps to get them the speed of the game. Now, you would say, well, why are you worried about injury in a preseason game but not in a practice? That's fair. But if I'm going to get my guy hurt, I'd rather do it in a controlled setting than I would in a preseason game. These preseason games are going to go by the way of they're going out in terms of players playing. They're not going to go away because of the money. They want the money. But you're not going to see people playing their players in these preseason games when they're practicing with other teams. That's not going to happen. That's not going to happen. I'm Mike Gill. This is the Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN. It's brought to you by the New Jersey Board of Elections. New Jersey voters, you can cast your ballot early in person before the fall's general election day. Learn more about your voting options at vote.nj.gov. Don't forget Eagles and Jets Friday night. It's the last chance to see the reserves because that's who I think is going to be playing. I'm Mike Gill. This is the Sports Bash, 97.3 ESPN, the free mobile app. Download the free mobile app in the Apple Store or Google Play, and you can message us through the free app on your phone. Free hour for you, 609-403-0973, 609-403-0973. Plenty more to come. Eagles, Sixers, by the way. Couple thoughts there. Phillies off tonight, but big one tomorrow. This is the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app. All right, 3:30 Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN. Did anybody listen to Gabe Kapler over the weekend? I know that many people are not big Gabe Kapler fans in this area, but Gabe Kapler, yes, the former Phillies manager, had an interesting moment the other day when he was getting interviewed in the pregame. And he's getting a bunch of questions asked his way. By the way, for those of you who have no idea what's going on with Gabe Kapler because you wrote him off and thought that he was the worst manager in baseball, even though I continue to tell you that that's not the case, they are 80-44. They are the only team in baseball that has hit the 80 win mark, right? They have won 64% of their games. They are 2.5 games up on the Dodgers with a roster that is significantly worse than the Dodgers. And yet somehow, some way, there they are, first place in not only the National League West, but they are the best team in all of baseball. So I don't know how many people saw this the other day. So Gabe Kapler is getting in the pregame media, scrum, I guess you would say. And he is being asked a couple of baseball questions. So take a listen to the pregame meeting with the media with Gabe Kapler, who just stops his interview in the middle of everything. And here's what he had to say. It's pretty interesting. There's Gabe Kapler. All right. So Kapler is getting asked questions about something. I don't even know what they're asking him, but he just literally stops the whole interview in the middle of it. And he just says, listen, how many of you people know Greta Van Fleet? And he's just literally like, hey, let's take this all in together. Do you think that Gabe Kapler misses being the manager of the Philadelphia Phillies at all? Do you think that Gabe Kapler is sitting there going, man, I really wish that the Phillies fans appreciated me a little bit more? I mean, can you imagine? This guy is 80-44, and he had this fan base telling him he didn't know what he was doing. Right? He had a Phillies fan base screaming from the high heavens that he didn't know what he was doing. Is this not the ultimate last laugh in the history of being fired? Well, I mean, Terry Francona got fired by the Phillies, went on and won a World Series a couple times, but little different. This situation here was this Gabe Kapler thing is what I stress all the time, okay? It's what I stress all the time, how irrational the fans can be, okay? Fans want to blame the coach, the manager, all the time. It's an easy, lazy, convenient thing to do. Why? Because there was a coach or manager somewhere in your past that you didn't agree with, that you thought did you wrong. So when you watch a game, you blame that guy for the reason of why the team stinks. The Phillies' problem wasn't Gabe Kapler. The Phillies' problem is the same problem they continue to have. They're simply not good enough. Gabe Kapler wasn't the problem with this team. As I told you, for the 2 years he was here, somehow he was a miracle worker keeping that team in the race. This team here should be significantly better than the 63-61 mark they are, but yet they are still right around where Gabe Kapler had them. When you give Gabe Kapler a team that is prepared to win, they're 80-44. So I tell the fans, and I implore you again, Please stop blaming the manager and the coach for the team's shortcomings. Gabe Kapler wasn't your team's problem. This guy's loving life out there. He got as far away from Philadelphia's fans as you could find. And this isn't like, hey, Mike Gill's anti-Philadelphia fans. No, I love the Philadelphia fans. I do think they're a little irrational at times. But sometimes we ask the players to look at themselves in the mirror. I'm asking you to do the same thing. Just look at yourself in the mirror sometimes and say, am I being rational with the decision I'm about to make, with what I'm about to blurt out? Ask yourself. Go check your social media feed and ask, hey, was I irrational about Gabe Kapler? Because it's one of the most amazing stories that I've ever seen. This guy was despised here for no other reason than he's a good-looking guy. People didn't like him because he was quirky and he was a good-looking guy. This is why people deemed that he didn't know what he was doing. He didn't know what he was doing because he looked the way he did. That's essentially why people didn't like him. Was he a great manager? Probably not. Guess what? We're all a lot better managers when I have a bullpen that actually helps me get people out. He didn't have that. San Francisco surely does. And all of a sudden, Gabe Kapler knows what he's doing. Funny how that works. But his personality is exactly the type of personality that this team probably needs. And I'm not saying, hey, Joe Girardi's terrible, or this team is better than they are and should be winning more games. Their bullpen was terrible for the first half of the year. They've cleaned it up a little bit. And when they cleaned that up, their starting pitching fell apart. And when they cleaned that up, their offense went south. And all that adds up to 500 baseball. But maybe the personality of their old manager is exactly what this team actually needs. Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN. I'm Mike Gill. Hopefully you're enjoying your Monday. Good to be back with you. 609-403-0973. 609-403-0973. That's your text board. Download the free mobile app, hit the Message Us button, and your message will come right to the Maplat Kia studios. And you can watch the show live on YouTube and Twitter and be a part of the show in the live video chat in the comments section of whatever platform you're watching on. I am Mike Gill. This is the Sports Bash at Mike Gill Show on Twitter. Go to 973ESPN.com to find out the latest on the Flyers. They just made a signing that could mean their offseason is just about wrapped up. Kevin Durso has more on that over on our website, 973ESPN.com. All right, Sports Bash here on a Monday. 609 403 0973. 609 403 0973. Text board. Don't forget, you can always download the free mobile app and hit the Message Us button and message us through your free mobile app. It's free in the Apple Store, Google Play. At Mike Gill Show on Twitter. I don't understand how people, Josh, somebody was commenting on your tweet about Hoskins. I don't understand what people listen to sometimes, right? The whole situation with Hoskins. The guy tweets at you about the whole Hoskins thing, that you wanted Hoskins traded, right? Was that what the gist of his tweet? Your tweet suggested what? I think you tweeted something about Hoskins returning. He had 2 RBI, right? And you said, he's 2 RBI. Give me the scenario again.
So the full thing was I tweeted out last night that with the return of Rhys Hoskins to the Phillies lineup, the Phillies scored 7 runs. The last time they did that was August 5th versus Washington. In that game, Hoskins also had 2 RBIs, just like in today's game. Hoskins may be the most important player in the Phillies lineup at this point. To which the gentleman at Coastal Fence said,
who's a good dude, by the way. He's not like a troll guy. So I'm not like ripping the guy. I'm just saying I feel like he didn't hear what was said correctly. There's a difference between like troll guys and this guy. He's a pretty good listener. He's not a bad dude. I think he just heard this wrong.
Right. He says, and you guys wanted him traded.
Right. Which is like, and you guys wanted him traded, to which you responded.
Right. I said that's a misinterpretation of what I've been saying. I've consistently said that Hoskins is the most trade value on the team among the players who could be traded, and the Phillies need to make a choice between Hoskins and Bohm this offseason.
Right. To which he responded, fair enough. Gill wanted him traded then. Not accurate. I said I don't want Hoskins traded. I said he is the only piece that has value to other teams because of his age, salary, and production. If you want to shake the roster up, Hoskins was the guy to move, not because I wanted him traded.
Yeah, nobody here hates Hoskins. There's no Hoskins haters here. It's just an understanding of you have a general manager. His name is Dave Dombrowski, who has a 20-year history, by the way, of taking rosters and shaking them up to turn them into World Series champions. So if you are a GM with a history, well, in this case, a baseball executive, it was a history of shaking rosters up, then it's on us to say, okay, who can we identify as a candidate for such roster shakeups?
Right. If you want to get a better team, if you are stuck and mired in mediocrity, and part of the reason you're in mediocrity is because the roster is the same, right? Meaning, Rhys Hoskins been here for a couple of years. Bryce Harper's been here for a couple of years. JT Realmuto's been here for a couple of years.
Aaron Nola.
Segura, Didi, McCutchen, they've all been here for about 2 or 3 years together. Well, you can't trade Harper. You can't trade Realmuto. Nobody wants Segura. Nobody wants Didi. Nobody wants McCutchen.
McCutchen's going to be a free agent.
The only guy you could trade is Hoskins. That's not the only guy I want traded. That's the only guy that makes any sense. Right?
And yes, because the idea is that you have to give up something to get something. That's kind of how trades work, right?
Right, exactly. You have to give up something to get something. You have to be able to say, I have something that's pretty good, and I like this guy, but I know he's good. How can I change the complexion of my team and get different good pieces? Because this good piece is getting me here. I need to get different good pieces. So that is why Hoskins would become an expendable piece, not because Josh Henning wants him traded or Mike Gill wants him traded. That is not the case. So I think we should all stress that this team's in an interesting spot now. Here comes Hoskins. Hey, Hoskins can turn this whole thing around. Look, do I think Hoskins is a franchise-leading player? No, I do not, right? Baseball is different, though. It's not like you get a franchise quarterback and play him, and that's why you win. You can have Mike Trout and stink. You can have the best player on your roster and not be very good.
Right.
Rhys Hoskins Bryce Harper might be the MVP of the league, potentially. I don't think it's going to happen, but that doesn't mean you're going to be any good. The Phillies have to decide whether or not they are at a crossroads here. If they don't make the playoffs this year again, what do they do with this roster, right? How do I make it better? How do I get this roster from where they are, mired in mediocrity? How do I get them to the playoffs? Well, nobody wants Gene Segura. Nobody wants Didi Gregorius. Nobody wants Andrew McCutchen. Nobody wants Odubel Herrera. I can't trade Bryce Harper, and I likely can't trade JT Realmuto. So now what do? I have to make a decision on somebody unless I want to bring the same team back again. Who's the one guy who doesn't make a lot of money, is productive, and has a low age? It's Rhys Hoskins. So again, at Coastal Fence, who again, I'm not calling him out as a bad dude. I think he just is hearing what we're saying wrong. But how many people out there agree, which is, if the Phillies want to change, if they don't make the playoffs, look, Hoskins can go bananas these next couple of weeks and carry them to the playoffs, and that might change our conversation. But unless that happens and they don't make the playoffs again for the 11th straight year or 10th straight year or whatever it is, they got to figure out how to change the complexion of this roster.
And don't forget, someone was messaging me over the weekend, how frustrated they are with Alec Bohm. And I'm like, I understand your frustration. I am frustrated too. But if you are another team in baseball, do you want Alec Bohm? Probably not. Not for what you're going to want in return for him.
Well, and that's why I go back to Hoskins. Hoskins has the value. Bohm does not.
Especially to an American League team that has a DH opening. Listen, he could be the next JD Martinez or Nelson Cruz. Due to its 30 to 40 home runs a year, who bats about 245, 255 every year.
Now, I do want to stress this. Do I think Hoskins, again, is that franchise cornerstone? I do not. I have said in the past, Hoskins is not a two-hole hitter. He should be hitting 4 or 5 on a good team. Now, on this team, they have got him out of the two-hole. They've moved him back. He is hitting 247 this year. His on-base percentage is 336. Neither one of those numbers is very good. Now, the RBI number 70, that's pretty good. The home run number 26, that's pretty good. But the slashing line of 247, 336, and 526, those are just very average numbers. So let's not go crazy and act like Hoskins is the be-all, end-all. Getting him back on this team is a big help. But, again, I don't think he's an untouchable.
And really the only untouchable at this point is Wheeler and Harper, in my opinion.
I don't even know that Harper's an untouchable. The problem, I think, with Harper is that nobody wants the contract.
That's probably part of it.
I don't think anybody wants to pay him for 10 years at that much. Later on in the deal.
Right, maybe he has 4 years left or something.
Because they didn't give him a ridiculous amount of AAV.
Right, and also the fact that if you go back years ago, remember when the Yankees acquired A-Rod all those years ago? That wasn't in the first few years of the Rangers contract. That was, a few years into.
Right. If the Phillies want to move on from Harper, they're going to have to wait a couple of years, okay? Because now Harper, for as long as he has been in the league, I think Harper's still like 28 years old.
Yeah, he's still in his 20s.
Yeah, I want to double check that. I'm pretty sure he is 28 years old. Let me see. Bryce Harper is 28. All right, so he will be 29 years old in November. No,
so he's not
October.
Old. He's not broken down or anything.
No, but here's the problem. That contract, you're paying him this year $26 million. 26, 26, 26, 26, 26, 26, 26. Then the last 3 years, you're paying him $22 million. So 2029, 2030, and 2031, he gets $22 million. So I think somewhere after 2025 is when the Phillies can probably realistically think about moving him. Because at that point, let's see, 28, this year he's 28, next year 29, 30, 31. He'll be 32 years old in the 2025 season. So after that, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38. So at the end of his deal, he's going to be 38 years old. But you're only paying him $22 million. Crazy to say only, but that's 10 years from now. $22 million 10 years from now. I mean, he might be one of the lowest paid players.
Well, look how long Pujols hung around in Anaheim at an older age with a high AAV. So, I mean, we've seen guys do that. It's not out of the imagination.
Yeah, that's why I think, though, that Hoskins and Nola, I think Nola still has value if you want to trade him. Hoskins and Nola are the only two players that have value, low salary, and the age that other teams would look for to change the complexion of the Phillies roster. Again, this isn't we want those two guys traded. I don't want the Phillies to trade Rhys Hoskins and Aaron Nola. I want them to win with those guys. They're both homegrown players. I just don't see it happening.
Listen, if you want to really change the roster and you call a team like the A's, for example, and say, I want Matt Chapman, your third baseman, or any team that has that caliber of player, Kyle Lewis, the center fielder with Seattle, in order to get a player of that age and that caliber, you got to give up something substantive in return. It can't just be Bryce and Stott and a bunch of random prospects.
Right. Exactly. 609-403-0973. Mike, how about Nola and realize he's not an ace and grab somewhat better talent? Yeah, I just kind of hit on that. The other guy that you could trade would be Nola. You could say, hey, look, Hoskins or Nola would be the two guys who have the age, the contract situation that works, and the production. I know Nola has not been productive this year, but if you put Aaron Nola on the trade block, you would get calls for him. The question is, are you ready to give up on Nola? Would you rather give up Nola or Hoskins to change the complexion of this roster? And if you're me, I would probably say Hoskins.
Because your theory is it's easier to find a bat than a pitcher?
Yeah, and I have Bohm here. I know Bohm is not as good as Hoskins currently right now, but maybe if he's settled in and playing first base, that would help him out a little bit. It's hard to find a top-of-the-rotation pitcher, and why Nola has not been a consistent top-of-the-rotation pitcher this year, or quite frankly, even last year, he still would be a 1, 2, or 3 on almost every single team in Major League Baseball, and that's tough to find.
Listen, if you go in the postseason right now and your 3 is Wheeler, Nola, Gibson, you're not bad. You're not great, but you're not bad.
And keep in mind, Eflin was pitching pretty well this season. He wasn't great, but, you had 3 guys. If you put Eflin in this rotation as well, and he's your 4th guy now, you have – and that rotation should be coming back next year because I'm almost positive that when they got Gibson, he had another year left on the deal.
That's right. Gibson has 1 more year left on his deal.
Right. So next year you would go with Wheeler. Now, that'll be interesting. Do the Phillies go with Wheeler on opening day?
They should.
Right. Do they usurp Nola, who has been your opening day pitcher since he's got here?
It's not a necessity, though.
Well, this year they had Wheeler. Last year they had Wheeler.
True.
But it wasn't until this year that they felt that Wheeler passed Nola. But will they show that when they make the opening? Now, if he wins this damn Cy Young Award, you can't not throw him on opening day.
Right. That would be hilarious.
But,
hey, you won the Cy Young, but you're not the opening day starter.
Exactly.
Although it did happen in Atlanta years ago. Remember when Smoltz won the Cy Young, but Maddox still the opening day starter.
Correct.
So.
That said, you come in the next year with Wheeler, Nola, Gibson, Eflin, and Suarez. That's a pretty good 5-man rotation.
And Suarez has gotten better with each start.
Yeah, the problem is it's taking him too damn long to stretch out. All right, when we come back, the Eagles are getting ready for the Jets, but who will we see play on Friday, if anybody at all? Plus, I was telling you about an Eagle player from Jamestown, New York. I will tell you that answer on the other side here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast, and it is brought to you by Prop Swap, where America buys and sells sports bets. Take your profit, find out how. PropSwap.com. Download the Prop Swap app today. Jeff Mosher is here from the Inside the Birds podcast, which dropped this morning, 6 a.m. for your listening pleasure. Eagles getting ready for the Jets this weekend. Who will we see? Who will we not see? What have we seen? What's on tap? Let's bring in Jeff Mosher now from the Inside the Birds podcast on today's edition of Football at 4. Jeff Mosher, good to see you.
My friend, how are you?
Well, it's been a whirlwind for me, man. I'm happy to be back in the saddle here. Spending 10 days anywhere can wear on you, but it's good to be back, and the Eagles getting ready for Friday night. I guess some of the questions that arise for Friday night is who will we see? Last night, Nick Sirianni kind of indicated he didn't have that answer, but do you?
I don't have the answer. I would hope that Jalen Hurts and the first-team offense would play a little bit against the Jets, because if not, then that would mean that Jalen Hurts would be getting ready for the season opener against Atlanta with about 10 snaps of preseason football under his belt. And while I understand that preseason football means nothing, and I don't care about outcomes or results, you care about speed of the game, preparedness. I do argue, I'd say I take issue with the way the coaches try to say that joint practices are just like games, so they count that as kind of having experience. I would say that that's not fair, because those are scripted practices where, much like in practice, you're with the first team offense for a few plays, then you're out. Then comes the second string, then comes the third string, and you're not always in move the ball scenarios. Sometimes you're in red zone, sometimes you're in other situational football. I mean, to me, I don't think you get your whole body conditioned for the speed of a football game unless you're at least playing in parts of a football game. So that's just where I would disagree with coaches.
Right. Well, he mentioned Hurts, who now I wasn't here Thursday. I didn't see what happened Thursday. This wonky situation with the illness or stomach bug or whatever. But when Hurts was back at practice last night, correct?
Yes, he was back at practice. It's our understanding that there's nothing funny about that situation, that he just really did have abdomen pains and went to the hospital to get him checked out.
Right. Now, I guess it was suggested on the postgame show that this was a ruse, like that he was not actually sick, and the Eagles were trying to hide the fact that they just that whole situation was.
I don't know what you're talking about, the Comcast one. I didn't get to see that because I was working, but I did hear throughout the day after, on whether it's Sports Talk or on other on Twitter, some various conspiracy theories. And look, right. Sometimes
what would the Eagles have to gain by that, though?
I don't know. Like, even if they did want to create a conspiracy where they didn't want to play him for whatever reason, they could have literally just said he arrived with a sore arm, or they could have made up a bunch of different excuses other than we had to send him to the hospital for abdomen pain, and then sent him to the hospital. That's, even for the Eagles, that's a little bit much.
Yeah, I would agree with that. So, as you mentioned, Hurts has played not a lot. From what we've seen, though, you want to see him play more, but are you comfortable saying that, hey, this guy is the unquestioned starter and has improved from what we saw last year?
Oh, absolutely. He's the unquestioned starter. He's certainly, I think after the first 2 weeks of camp, that was described to me as average, uneven, good days, bad days, things like that. He had a very nice performance there, albeit brief, against the Steelers, and he's been good in practices. I was told he's performed well in the joint practices against New England. We didn't get to see him into a game. So I think, the arrow's trending up. You would like to me personally, you'd like to see him play, a quarter against the Jets or a couple more series. But with what we have to operate and what we have to go with, he has done a nice job for the last 2 weeks in practice. And yes, he's unquestionably the starter for this football team.
Well, if anybody was questioning it, the results from Flacco and Mullins certainly solidify that, I would imagine. Now, let me ask you about the wide receiver room. And after 2 games, do we have a better view of who may be in the room and who might be in trouble?
I think after what we've seen from the first day of camp till now, there's a pretty good reason to be concerned about the overall depth at this position. I mean, you've got 4 guys right now who you can say have made the 53. You've got Devontae Smith, you have Jalen Reagor. I think Quez Watkins has etched himself onto the 53 with his play, and Greg Ward. Now, Greg Ward didn't play a whole lot in that game. He did some punt returns, but I tend to think that's because they know what they have in Greg Ward. He's been around long enough now. They wanted to see Quez Watkins as kind of a number 3/slot wide receiver. If you notice, that's where he got most of his reps in that game against the Patriots. But I thought it was very telling, Mike, that Travis Fulgham did not see a single snap until the second half of the game. And honestly, the pass offenses, as you just mentioned, were so bad in that game that it was really hard to get an evaluation from him from that standpoint. He was out there, but nobody caught passes. Him and JJ Arcega-Whiteside were out there pretty much all second half.
Right.
And nobody could do anything because the offense was that bad. But this is a guy, Fulgham, who showed up to camp with basically a great opportunity with the size that he has and the skill set that he showed, especially in those 4 games. They don't really have another receiver like him with that kind of size and ability. And he had to come focused and ready to go and rise to the occasion. And as camp went on, he started to fall down the totem pole. You saw Quez Watkins going up the totem pole. And I think there's a cause and effect there. I mean, just based on what I know about Travis Fulgham and what we've kind of reported about him last year when Alshon Jeffrey came back and he kind of disappeared. Now this time you saw Quez Watkins get a little run. And did he come and fight every day, or did he start to fade out a little bit? So you start to see the problems here. He's definitely not guaranteed his spot on the 53. And when you only have 4 receivers that right now you can rely on, and one of them is Quez Watkins, who doesn't have a whole lot of experience and still has a lot to prove, it's not an ideal situation.
Yeah, now you mentioned Fulgham, JJ Arcega-Whiteside. Each of them got a target, no catches. Would JJ be more in danger of not making the team, or is he closer to making the team?
That's a tough decision. You know, I think normally when you're a fringe receiver, special teams comes into play. Now, Arcega-Whiteside is playing on special teams. I think he's had a special teams tackle in each of the last 2 preseason games. I don't know if that's wowing them or doing them enough to say, all right, JJAW over Fulgham. Fulgham has all the qualities physically that you'd want. So I feel like he's going to get the benefit of the doubt. But if you know, by 2 weeks from now, Mike, it's cut down day, and they feel like this kid has to be coached so hard, and this kid loses his focus or he loses his confidence, and that it's just taking so much effort just to get him to, you know, be productive in practice, then as opposed to JJAW, who has his limitations, who has, you know, difficulty separating, but is now playing on special teams. And as far as I know, there's no issues of coachability with him or lack of confidence. That's not his thing. His thing is just, where do you put him where he can succeed? Because he's clearly not a very good outside wide receiver in this league, but can you put him in the slot? Can you use him on special teams in any way? That may be where the conversation goes.
Right. And then obviously you got in that conversation, the Fulgham versus JJ, you do have draft spot.
You do. I mean, this is now year 3 for JJAW, and he's running with the, you know, basically the 2nd/3rd team only in the second half of a preseason game. So I think we're past the point of we've got to really give him all these opportunities because he's a 2nd-round pick. I think if the Eagles were really much more deep and talented at the wide receiver position, we wouldn't even be having this conversation. So, I mean, I don't know that the 2nd-round pick is what's going to keep him over Fulgham. I think it's going to, because I honestly think that if they had to make the choice, the team would rather choose Fulgham because you've already seen that he can play at the NFL level when he's invested and focused better than JJAW can. But how hard does this coaching staff want to have to work to get its 5th receiver to be the receiver they think it can be?
Yeah. All right, let's take a look at where we are at the running back situation because, you know, in the game the other day, you had Holyfield 4 for 31. He led the way, looked pretty good, almost 8 yards a carry. Gainwell, Sanders, Scott, Howard didn't get a whole heck of a lot of touches. So do we have a better, clearer picture of where this team enters Friday night?
Yeah, I don't think anything's changed really ever since the release or the waiving of Kerryon Johnson, who's now, I think, reverted to IR. He was not claimed. you've got 4 running backs. You've got Miles Sanders, you've got Jordan Howard, you have Boston Scott and Kenneth Gainwell. And, 3 of those 4 are pretty good pass catching running backs. And the one that's not, Jordan Howard, is a good pass protecting running back. They all have different kind of skill sets, but I think all collectively they give you what you want. You can get speed from Miles and Kenneth Gainwell. You get pass catching from Gainwell and Boston Scott. They would like to see Miles Sanders be a better pass catcher. He's working on that. We'll see what happens. You've got that hard hitting kind of, power guy in Jordan Howard. And I think those are your 4 running backs going into the season.
All right, Jeff Mosher, football at 4 here. Taking a look at what's going in the final preseason game on Friday night. Of course, you can hear it here on 97.3 ESPN. Do you take anything from what you saw from that defensive effort Thursday night and then say, hey, I want to play Jonathan Gannon, I want your defensive players out there Friday night?
I think fans would love to see that because they can't witness something like that again. I think the takeaway is that, it's something that we've talked about a lot. This team is not as deep as it's been in the past. So it's very fine to say, look, the starters didn't play, so they should have gotten outclassed. Okay. But there were starters, by the way, in that game. I mean, Alex Singleton played, Eric Wilson played, Anthony Harris played, Steven Nelson played. So you got 4 guys in your back 7 that did play. All right. So I get the starting defensive line didn't play. But some of those guys then who came in and got steamrolled, you're talking about the Hassan Ridgeways and the McGills and some of the linebackers and some of the safeties. Like, those guys are just one injury away from becoming starters. So the idea that I keep seeing it floated out there, none of these guys are ever going to make the team or see the field. No, that's not true. That's not true. And it's not just one game, it's 2 games that they've really struggled against the run. So again, maybe they're not doing what they would typically do during the season. And of course, the starting defensive line did not play. But I think that it's fair when you see that both teams they've played in the preseason ran the ball more than they had total plays. That's a little bit of a concern.
Yeah, I mean, I know that, as you mentioned, they didn't play a lot of guys, but, Sirianni was asked, I guess, whenever he spoke, I guess it was last night, that, hey, would you like to emphasize him being a little bit more physical and changing the way that he's calling defense? It seems that he's calling a very vanilla defense so far.
I thought Jonathan Gannon called it vanilla defense in the first game. In the second game, it's still vanilla, yes, as far as their big, their 2 deep coverages, no crazy blitzes. But in the first quarter, you saw them take Jannard Avery and play him as an on-the-ball Sam up close at the line of scrimmage, shooting the gaps, which was different from the first game. And then I also saw more twisting and stunting from the defensive line here in the second game. So it is correct to say it's a pretty relaxed, kind of soft defense. But they got no pass rush from the front 4, from guys that you were hoping to see some pass rush from, whether it was Teron Jackson, whether it was Milton Williams. I thought actually did give you a little bit of pass rush, but not much from the interior. And so that gave the quarterbacks all the time in the world to throw the ball. So as well as New England ran the ball, Mike, there were a couple of third downs they had to convert, and they were able to be converted easily because Cam Newton and Mac Jones really didn't see a whole lot of pressure.
Hey, Jeff, what's the tight end room look like now with Kroom and Jackson, that situation?
Yeah, pretty thin, right? I mean, so as of today, as of now, Zach Ertz still on the team. Interesting that he still yet has not spoken to the media. So there's Zach Ertz, Dallas Goedert. I thought Jack Stoll played a pretty good game, the rookie, undrafted rookie that they gave some money to. He had 1 pass go off his hands that got intercepted, but he also had 3 or 4 nice catches and some yak yards on one of those plays, and he also blocked fairly well. So Richard Rodgers is right now. Richard Rodgers would be your 3 behind Ertz and Goddard, or Goddard and Ertz, or whatever. And Jack Stoll, I still think, is going to make it as the 4th tight end. If Ertz is not with the team when the season begins, then you're a little thin there. You've got Goddard, Rodgers, and Stoll. Tyree Jackson probably could have made it as a 4. They'll probably put him on injured reserve. He'll make the 53. Then they'll put him on IR and clear up a spot. So they may bring in someone else there. Maybe it opens up the door for them to bring in another tight end.
Couple guys I want your thoughts on and what you've seen. McPherson the other night had 9 tackles. I mean, has he proven to say, hey, he was a worthy pick?
Well, it just shows you how your run defense is doing when you have 9 tackles from your cornerback, right? No, he's played physical all camp. I think that's one thing to like about Zach McPherson. He certainly got picked on in coverage, certainly gave up a lot of catches. But again, when there was no pass rush, he almost didn't have a chance. Now he showed he's a little grabby. He had a holding call, and then against the Steelers, he had a DPI. So obviously that's all the stuff that they knew that to expect with a rookie. I know his practices haven't been as good lately from a coverage standpoint as they were early on. The kid's got a nose for the ball, and he's scrappy. He just has a lot to learn, and that's why the Steven Nelson signing was really important, because they knew they needed to gradually ease Zach McPherson in, and he's got to learn the game and the tendencies.
Yeah.
So that's why you have to, as an Eagles fan, you have to hope and pray that you don't have a game where either Slay or Nelson leave, or God forbid, like we've seen in the last 2 years, both your starting corners leave, because then you're back to, Maddox on the outside along with McPherson, or both McPherson and Craig James, or maybe even a Michael Jacquet if he makes the team. You're getting back to that situation that was not ideal.
Yeah, and I guess, Jeff, I mean, we really haven't got to look at how he plans on using the Jannard Averys of the world, Kerrigan, like that type of player.
Right. Again, we saw a little bit of what they might do with that Sam spot when they have 3 linebackers on the field, because we saw Avery up close on the line shooting the gaps. I tell you, Adam Kaplan dropped a kind of a nugget on our podcast that dropped this morning that said a couple of teams have called and asked about Avery, because he's always been known as a guy who fits well in a 3-4 scheme. He's got that outside edge kind of burst, probably better for a 3-4 type front anyway. So we'll see, because they're really kind of auditioning 3 guys at that one spot: Jannard Avery, Ryan Kerrigan, and the rookie Patrick Johnson. So we'll see what the Eagles decide to do, because if they feel like Kerrigan can hold that spot down and they really like Patrick Johnson, then maybe Avery is someone they'd be willing to part with if they got the right kind of call for him. I don't think they're shopping him. I just think that they're getting calls because people know where he fits.
All right, speaking of getting calls, Andre Dillard, any calls there?
Yes, there have been calls on Andre Dillard. I think you should anticipate that. This is an offensive line deficient league. It would not surprise me if the Eagles got called, if we heard about them getting calls about Matt Pryor, who may not make this team, but he's an up and down player. There are sometimes he's in there and you're like, oh God, I can't believe it. There's sometimes he's in there and he looks like he's a pretty decent backup offensive lineman / spot starter. So in this league where there's going to be a lot of demand for even adequate offensive linemen, and him being kind of, on the outside looking in when all is said and done, especially we'll see here how LaRaven Clark plays. And then when Landon Dickerson comes back, he's a guy that you might be able to get something for.
Yeah, it seems that the Eagles feel comfortable enough to say we can move an offensive lineman. A lot of teams don't have that capability, but they are one of them that could make a trade at that position.
Yeah, I mean, you look at their starting 5. They're probably going to keep 9 at the most. That's what teams do. Some keep 10, but I don't know. You got 5, so you got the starting 5. Driscoll is a 6. Landon Dickerson, I assume, he'll be healthy at some point. He'll be a 7. Herbig is your 8th right there. And then you've got now LaRaven Clark and Pryor and Sua Opeta. So you've got kind of a little grapple there for that last spot, even if they're going to go to 9. So.
All right, Friday night, Eagles and Jets right here on 97.3 ESPN. You can hear all the action with Merrill Reese and Mike Quick. And, of course, check out the Inside the Birds podcast. It drops Monday and Thursday at 6 a.m. in the morning, and you can check that all out. What is one thing – I know you'll be back on Wednesday, Moshe, but what is the most interesting thing this week for you?
That's a good question. With them facing the Jets, they're going to play the Jets week 13. So it's kind of interesting to see what they do this week in practice schematically, if they kind of keep it very simple or if they're really trying to warm up for the regular season here and ramp up some of the things that they've been doing.
All right, those joint practices, which you mentioned, Sirianni thinks that he holds them in high regard. They get a couple of them this week. We'll see. I don't anticipate the starters playing Friday night. You're saying you think they might?
I'm saying I'm with you. I have no idea what to expect, but I certainly think it would be beneficial if they did.
All right. Well,
actually,
we'll see.
Devontae Smith, by the way, should be another, because I don't think he did too much against the Patriots. He was just coming back. So now he and Hurts will be on the field and get a little bit more opportunity to work here in these joint practices against the Jets.
Keep an eye on that. Check out the Inside the Birds podcast. And, of course, football at 4 tomorrow. Andrew is here, Jeff on Wednesday, Adam on Thursday, and then Friday, Andrew's back to get you ready for the Eagles and Jets final preseason tilt. And then the Eagles September 12th against the Falcons right here on 97.3 ESPN. All right, Moshe, good to see you, man.
You too, man. Congrats on all the baseball success there.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate that. All right, Jeff Mosher, like all guests, here on the Sports Bash, talking a little Eagles football at 4 with you guys out there on a Monday. We have plenty more to do this hour. Bob Wankel's going to talk some Phil. Jeff Kerr a little bit later on in the show as well. What else we got for you today? I know that all the NFL stuff is like right here, right? We can almost smell the NFL being back. This hour being brought to you by Prop Swap. Speaking of the NFL, it's America's sports betting marketplace. Sell your sports bets and take your profit. Find out how at PropSwap.com. Download the Prop Swap app today. You want to prop swap something? Now's a great time. NBA win totals are out. It's a great time to prop swap. You can buy your ticket, Sixers over under 51.5. You buy that ticket right now and prop swap it later. PropSwap.com and the Prop Swap app. It's an easy thing to do. Sixers over under 51.5, which would put them, according to Vegas, as the 4th best team in the league. Brooklyn 55.5, Milwaukee 54.5, Lakers 52.5, Sixers 51.5. Maybe that Ben Simmons guy's pretty good. This is the Sports Bash. All right, Sports Bash on a Monday. I'm Mike Gill, 97.3 ESPN. August 23rd is the day. These are events that happen on this day. Do you remember them? Here on the Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN. I'm Mike Gill. Josh Hennings, my producer. These are events that happened on this day, August the 23rd. Various years, obviously. We'll go through a quick list of things that happened on this day and go back and forth on some of the fun things that we remember about those actual lists. Now, some of these events we weren't even alive for, like this one. In 1936, Bob Feller made his first start at the age of 17. He struck out 15 in a 4-1 win. Can you imagine a 17-year-old jumping on the mound and striking out 15 right now?
It sounds like a phenom to me.
Bob Feller, I would imagine, would be classified as a phenom. So, like 17 years old, now you're in high school. Like, how did that even happen?
I mean, his parents had to sign like a permission slip, probably. I mean, they were
like Rookie of the Year. What was the movie where the kid was the manager?
Yeah, Rookie of the Year. He was the pitcher. He messed up his arm, and he all of a sudden could throw super fastballs.
Right.
Pitch for the Cubs.
On this day, 1998, Barry Bonds becomes the first player in Major League Baseball history with 400 homers and 400 steals. He homered against the Marlins.
And he did that before he ever took any PEDs.
Yeah, I have no problem with Bonds getting in the Hall of Fame.
He should be in the Hall of Fame. He's part of baseball history. He's one of the greatest hitters of all time.
2009, Eric Bruntlett of the Phillies turns the second game-ending unassisted triple play in the history of baseball against Jeff Francoeur and the Mets. Now, I remember that vividly.
Now, were you there for that?
I was not. I think the game was actually in New York. I'm not 100% sure about that.
I know you went to a lot of Phillies games during that era. So.
Yeah, I did in 2009, but they went to the World Series that year, obviously. Bruntlett was a hate-the-face guy. I was not a big Bruntlett fan.
You weren't a Bruntlett guy.
No, but I think everybody would remember that he turned the unassisted triple play in that game.
I do remember it. It was amazing. Also, the call was amazing, too.
2009, you're obviously Harry's still the guy at that point, I believe. And I'm trying to remember if that game was in Philly or in New York.
I'm going to look it up where it was.
1975, the Pontiac Silverdome opened in Pontiac, Michigan. The venue is the home of the Detroit Lions and the Pistons and hosted the Super Bowl. Because of the harsh winters there, 1975, the Pontiac Silverdome opened in Pontiac, Michigan. That is no longer in use.
It was at the Mets.
That's what I thought. You ever been to? I'm imagining you haven't been to the Pontiac Silverdome.
No, I have not. I've never been to Detroit.
I've never been to Detroit either. It's one city I have not. I don't think I've ever been in the state of Michigan before. Actually,
that's a very interesting.
There's a couple states I've never been, like Cleveland. I actually was right on the border. We were about an hour from Cleveland the other day. We were in Erie, Pennsylvania for the day. Yes. And that was about an hour and a half from Cleveland. So I have never been to Cleveland. I've never been to Cincinnati or the state of Ohio for anything. So there you go.
I had to drive through Cleveland once. Not bad.
All right. On this day, as we talked about and by the way, that was at Citi Field. Yes, you're right. It was a double steal attempt in the bottom of the ninth. It was a 9-7 win on that one. All right. Do you remember this event happening in 2020? Donovan Mitchell and Jamal Murray each scored 50 points in Game 4 of the Western Conference first round in the bubble in Orlando.
I definitely remember that.
Right? It's the first game in postseason history with dueling 50-point games. Now, you don't hear it, do you remember, for the NBA in August?
Well, because of the pandemic, it created a whole new list of do you remember?
Right?
Now.
That's pretty amazing. Donovan Mitchell at 51, Jamal Murray at 50.
And that was back when we had nothing else to watch.
That was last year. This time last year, that game was on.
No NFL preseason.
It was the first round. The Sixers were getting swept by the Celtics.
Celtics, yeah, with no Ben Simmons.
Yeah, how about that? You think about that. This time last year was the NBA playoffs were just coming back.
So strange.
Isn't it crazy to think about where, like, I hate to say it, but it seems like the bubble thing was so long ago. Like, the Sixers' schedule for next year is already out.
I know. And it's a normal schedule.
Yeah, I didn't look at it yet. When are they starting? Did you see that?
They start against the Pelicans.
No, when?
Oh.
They sent it. I have it right here.
It's October 15th,
You know, is it like
20th?
Because weren't they thinking about starting? Weren't they thinking about starting in December? October 20th, they're starting against the Pelicans.
Yes, in New Orleans.
Yeah. And the 22nd, they play Brooklyn at home. Pretty interesting.
Jeff Kerr says he's looking forward to that game.
What else we got here? I'm still kind of amazed by the whole 17-year-old
Bob Feller
stepping on the mound. Yeah, Bob Feller. Walter Johnson pitches to Babe Ruth in a pregame attraction that draws 69,000 for the Yankees-Washington MLB doubleheader at Yankee Stadium. They raise $80,000 for Army-Navy relief there. Things like that just don't happen anymore.
That's so cool, though.
The first baseball Little League World Series is in Williamsport, Pennsylvania on this day in 1947. How about that? We drove by Williamsport. We drove by the stadium on the way home the other day.
I thought it was cool yesterday. I was telling you this earlier, Mike, that when they had the rain out at the Little League World Series to fill airtime, they had the kids from the teams interview Joe Madden.
Yeah, now you're not a fan of the Little League World Series.
I'm not. I'm just. It's not for me. Yeah. But I strongly appreciated it was so cool watching the kids talk to Joe Madden.
I'll tell you, when we were in our hotel, of course, we have 13-year-olds all there, so but everybody was watching. I mean, like the football games were on. Everyone's like, "Can you put the Little League World Series on?" It was crazy. Like, it was pretty fun.
That's awesome.
I think in 1950, I don't know if it was on this day, but that was 1947. 1950, I'm pretty sure Hamilton won the Little League World Series. Or at least made the Little League World Series. I'm pretty sure they won it, though. Somebody out there from Hamilton can fact check me on that one.
By the way, on Sunday Night Baseball last night, Mike Trout was saying how when he was in Little League, he was so disappointed he never got to get to the Little League World Series.
Yeah.
And that this weekend was the first time he ever been in Williamsport.
Really? He was there this weekend?
Yeah, for the Angels game.
Oh, that's right. They played that game Sunday night.
Yes.
Yeah. That was last night.
Yes, it was.
That was the first time I ever drove by. I didn't even know it was there. We got off the exit to get gas and then made a left. And there the stadiums, you couldn't see them. They were like down in this valley, but you saw the lights. But all the cops were out there with the barricades up for parking.
Directing traffic.
Yeah, directing traffic. I said, "What's going on here?" Guy said, "It's Little League World Series." But it was like 10:30 at night.
Well, that was when the Indians and the Angels were playing still.
Yeah, but not at that stadium.
Yeah, they were at the Little League.
No, this was Saturday.
Oh, Saturday.
Yeah.
Yeah, they weren't there then.
All right,
now you got me mixing my days up.
Yeah,
here.
Me too.
Today Monday.
1989, the Dodgers beat the Expos 1-0 in 22 innings. Can you imagine that being at that game? 22 innings, not one run scored.
That's
how long that game took.
What year was that?
1989.
So that was like Earl Hershiser's on the Dodgers.
Rick Dempsey hit a dinger.
Rick Dempsey.
There you go.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. Anybody from Hamilton verify that for me out there? They won the World Series in 50, didn't they? The Little League World Series? Hamilton? Or they make it? Something like that. Somebody out there from Hamilton can help me. 609-403-0973. Gotcha. All right, back with more Sports Bash. When we come back, Bob Wankel from
49.
Crossing Broad. What?
1949.
Hamilton?
Yes.
Got it. All right, Bob Wankel, Crossing Broad. Phils, what happened while I was gone? The answer next. All right, 441. Phillies 5 back all of a sudden. They're actually 5 back in the East. They're 5 back in the wild card. So which one do they have a better shot at? Bob Wankel, crossing broad, is back. When I left, the Phillies were in first place. I return, they seemingly are out of the race all of a sudden. Bob, what the heck happened? Give me a overview of the last 10 days.
Oh, gee, you know that little rise that they had at the beginning of the month? Well, they just did the exact opposite while you were away, man. And congratulations. Saw your team won it all. That's quite an accomplishment. So that's good stuff. But
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
The Phillies did not have similar success. I mean, listen, they came into August 1st, 4.5 games out of the division lead. They get into first place. Now they're a half game worse than they were to start the month. So, it was rough. The offense, I mean, to simplify this, and I'm sure that all of your listeners know this, the offense was simply dreadful over a 12-game stretch. They've won 4 of their last 12 games, and the Braves right now are out of this world.
Yeah, the Braves have won, 9 out of 10 or something to that effect, and obviously just have got scorching hot. So scorching hot, though, should we believe, Bob, that after watching what we've seen, that this lead is too insurmountable?
Probably not. I mean, listen, the Braves are 16-3 during the month of August, and what they've been able to do is take advantage of some simply awful teams. I mean, they had a lot of success with the Nationals. They went and they beat up on the Marlins. They went and they beat up on the Baltimore Orioles, who are even worse than the Arizona Diamondbacks. And so, listen, the Phillies were not able to do much with Arizona, obviously, but the Braves have just played a number of just simply wretched teams here recently, and now their schedule is going to harden up here a little bit. They have the Yankees to start the week, then they have the Giants, and then they have to go out west and play the Dodgers, and then they hit the Coors Field, and they play a Rockies team that is one of the best teams in baseball at home this season. So the Phillies have an opportunity to cut down this deficit here a little bit, and as bad as this team has been and as frustrating as they've been, I wouldn't be entirely surprised if they cut this lead down and get this thing interesting again here in the next 10 days or so.
Well, I guess the frustrating part is that you see Arizona, one of the worst teams, and you can't do anything against them. And obviously, you had a chance to make up some or keep pace or make it at least interesting with getting 2 out of 3 against a team like that. You get swept out, but you get back into the wild card race all of a sudden by beating the Padres 2 out of 3. So what's more attainable, the wild card or the East?
I still think that the East is the most direct path. I don't really believe in the Atlanta Braves. And I mean, listen, I know that they made a number of moves before the trade deadline. They've done a lot to bolster that lineup. Jorge Soler has given them a boost. Adam Duvall has given them a boost. Jock Peterson. But it's still a flawed lineup, and that bullpen has been shaky. Their starting rotation doesn't really put a real scare into you. And you're only dealing with one team, really. I just think the Mets are kind of done at this point. Whereas if you flip over to the wild card, the Padres, I still think are a talented enough team that they can hang. And the Cincinnati Reds, who we saw in this last homestand, they can really swing it up and down the lineup. And they play in a very, very weak NL Central when you get past the Brewers. And I think that they have a shot to make a move here as well. So if the Phillies are going to get to the postseason, I think it's still the same path that we've been looking at for the last couple of months, which is to win the division.
All right. I want to get your thoughts on this decision with Alec Bohm that they made yesterday. They send him down. Hoskins is up. First, let's start with Bohm and what they should do with him when they send him down there. Should they keep playing him at third, or is now the time? Do they just write this year off at the major league level and start teaching him a new position?
I think for the short term, and Sam Fuld had said this yesterday, they don't anticipate putting him out in left field. And I get why they won't do that. I mean, listen, if Alec Bohm comes back up in September, which he presumably will, I mean, the rosters don't expand the way that they used to, but they'll get a handful of spots back here as rosters expand over the final month. When Alec Bohm comes up, he's going to have to play third base when he's in the game. So he's not going to go out and be able to play left field in 2-3 weeks from now. So you might as well just let him go down, continue to work at third base in case you bring him back up and you decide to roll with him in your lineup again. This offseason, though, I think that they have to take a long, hard look at his future. I think it's very obvious that the concerns that existed when he was drafted still remain here now, which is that he probably cannot hang defensively at third base. So I think the long-term solution is to try to play him in left field, but I don't think that sending him down now and trying to get him to learn that on the fly is really a feasible option.
Right. So if you were to ask somebody off the record inside the organization, where do you see him? You think they would say left field because McCutchen's contract's up. That would be the spot?
Yeah, I mean, not that they're dead set on it, but I think that a lot of people within that organization at this point are starting to realize that, he probably does not have the skill set. And it's not a lack of effort. It's not that he doesn't try or that he doesn't work hard or anything like that. But I just think that naturally speaking, just the consistent ability, the soft hands element of things, just the feel for how to do it on a routine basis, it's just not there. And I think that that's something that probably would have clicked by now if it were to have been there. So right, I think that
they moved him to first for a couple of times when Hoskins was out, and he was a butcher over there too.
Yeah, I mean, listen, hands are hands, and he doesn't have a ton of experience over at first base, and there's this assumption that you move a guy across the diamond and that all of a sudden he's going to turn into a really good infielder. Well, it doesn't always work like that, I mean, it's not that easy, especially to do it on the fly in the middle of we'll use this term loosely, but a pennant chase, So that's where they're at right now, and it's interesting that they sent him down because as much as I like Ronald Torreyes and as much as you applaud the defensive stability that he's brought to their mix, and he's had a number of key hits, I mean, listen, that's a tough bat to play every single day in your lineup right now.
Well, you got Galvis coming back. I would imagine that maybe they platoon those guys at this point.
You'd think so. I mean, in a perfect world, Alec Bohm would have stuck, though. I mean, despite the offensive struggles early in the season and despite the relative lack of power for a corner infielder, I mean, Alec Bohm hit over 300 from the beginning of June through the first week of August with an OPS over 800. So while he wasn't knocking the ball out over the fence on a routine basis or driving balls consistently into gaps, he was still a fairly productive offensive player for this team. Freddie Galvis comes back, and that's fantastic, but when you look at how much Didi Gregorius is struggling right now, you kind of almost wonder. It's like they're still a spot short. Like Freddie Galvis can fill in and play for Didi Gregorius at this point.
There's a lot here, man. Last night they play Herrera in left. They've been doing that, obviously, but McCutchen is back. Herrera goes 4 for 5 with 3 RBI. Do we anticipate seeing more of him at the top of the lineup?
Yeah, I mean, I guess, it's like at this point you have to just kind of try to ride the hot hand. And, Travis Jankowski is not a guy that's going to give you sustained production. Odubel Herrera is not a guy that's going to give you sustained production. So I think that if you're Joe Girardi, you just have to say, hey, who's getting it done right now? Who's having the best swings right now? And just kind of take it day to day and piece it together. This team from the start of the season has lacked a true leadoff hitter, and that has not really changed. But, they just have to hope here that Odubel Herrera goes into one of his spells where, he puts together a 2-3 week stretch where he's out of his mind. And he's been really good this month during a stretch in which not many guys on this team have been.
Abuanco crossing broad covers the Phillies, and obviously an important stretch coming up. They're off today. They will play the Tampa Bay Rays, and then they've got a really friendly schedule the rest of the way. I mean, really, if you look at their schedule the rest of the way after this Rays series here, man, they cannot have what happened against the Diamondbacks happen. But really, that Braves series, if memory serves, they got that Braves series coming up in Milwaukee. They might be the only 2 teams left on the schedule that have a winning mark, correct?
Yeah, that's right. And listen, I mean, I think you're going to have a sense here, and I don't want to state the obvious. And I think that sometimes we kind of get caught up in saying, like, this is the biggest stretch, or we're going to know where this team stands. If we would have said after the Mets series a couple of weeks ago, like, hey, yeah, they're really well positioned here. The schedule's going to break, and they're going to be able to really distance themselves from this division, and that didn't happen. But with the Phillies playing the Rays, who are a good team, who do they have coming in this weekend? So they have the Nationals to start next week, and then they have the Diamondbacks coming in for 4, and I think that they obviously owe them some payback here this weekend.
Well, Diamondbacks are here Thursday, right, and then the Nationals Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday next week, and then you're in Miami and Milwaukee. So you do have a nice little road trip there, but Washington, Miami, Milwaukee, and then you got Colorado, Chicago, the Mets, Baltimore, Pittsburgh.
Yeah. And I mean, when you compare what the Phillies have over their next 10 games or so with what the Braves have over their next 10 games, like we talked about before, you're talking about a team that's got to deal with the Yankees, got to deal with the Giants, got to deal with the Dodgers. Phillies have an opportunity over the next week and a half here to cut this lead down to, maybe 2 or 3 games. Let's, assume that they're not going to get all 5 of them back here. But the Braves are going to cool down. They're a good team, but they're not a 16-3 team. They're not a team that's going to, win 30 of their final 38 games here down the stretch. So the Phillies have an opportunity to get back into it. It's probably not quite as bleak as things seem at the moment, but they've got to get going. They've really got to take care of business over these next 6 games here at home.
They sure do. And, one of the things I guess that has been a plus is the bullpen seemingly has found itself a little bit here. So if you can get the offense going, you might be able to get a good streak here.
Yeah, you really go back to the All-Star break. And since the All-Star break, there have not been really games that they've blown because of the bullpen in the final inning.
Correct.
Saturday night was about as bad of a loss, as tough as a loss as you're going to get. But that was more, Aaron Nola just gave up a 2-run homer at a bad time. And it was just sort of like a, tough break. And then you look at what happened in the 10th inning. I would put that more, on the defense than I would on a lack of execution from the bullpen per se. So, they have gotten some stability in the back end of that bullpen. And that's one thing that they can kind of hang their hat on. But offensively, I am simply stunned at how bad they've been. And you have to hope that Rhys Hoskins coming back kind of lengthens this lineup out a little bit and gets them going.
I'm going to say, getting him back, he hit a couple homers. That obviously helps them out. And obviously, as you wrote about the other day, a couple overexposed players, the Torreyases of the world, the Jankaskis of the world. You got to figure out a way, I guess, to pick your spots a little better. I'm very intrigued. You know what, when Galvis is due back?
Yeah, I mean, he's close. I would think that you're going to see him this week, whether it's against the Rays or if it's going to be this weekend. But, not only do you get Rhys Hoskins back, who provides that power element, that run production element in the middle of the order, but, for as good and timely and clutch as Brad Miller has been for this team, I mean, he went through a roughly a 3-week stretch in which he hit about 140 for this team with an OPS in the 300s. So, like I said, it's just certain guys being overexposed. Brad Miller is a nice player. You can't run him out there for 15 straight starts. Ronald Torreyes is a nice player. I think you start to run into some problems when you run him out there for 15 straight starts, though.
Yeah, I agree with you there. Bob Wankel, Crossing Broad, Phillies, Rays tomorrow night, little 2-gamer, and then they'll play Arizona for 4. You'll get Suarez and Wheeler in the Tampa Bay series. Moore, Nola, Gibson, Suarez against Arizona. There's your pitching, the way it kind of stacks up after this day off here for the Phils. At Bob Wankel CB, more at crossingbroad.com. It's good to see you, man.
Good to see you too. Like I said, congrats, man. Good to see you back.
It was a wild ride, my friend. A wild ride. All right, I'll talk to you Friday.
All right, see you.
Bob Wankel, Crossing Broad, Mondays and Fridays. We talk Phillies right here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN, the free mobile app. And Phillies 5 out in the East, 7 back are the Mets. They are 5 back of the wild card, the Fightins are. So they have just as good a shot, I guess, in the East as they do the wild card, which is something that we didn't think was going to happen. But the Padres have played such bad baseball, including losing to the Phillies 2 out of 3. They've lost 8 out of 10. And all of a sudden, the Padres have fallen out of the wild card race. It's Dodgers and Reds in the wild card. Dodgers are going to win the wild card. They are 9.5 up. Either them or the Giants. The Giants are 2.5 up on the Dodgers. Dodgers are 9.5 up on the Reds. The Reds are a game up on the Padres. 4.5 up on the Cardinals and 5 up on the Phillies. That's your wild card race right now. Next hour, more Sports Bash on the way. The NFL is fast approaching. The Eagles have questions. I have answers. Plus, Jeff Kerr, CBS Sports, covers the Eagles and the NFL. He'll join us at 5:25 tonight, right here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. And don't forget, download the free mobile app in the Apple Store or Google Play. Hey, 5 o'clock on a Monday. I'm Mike Gill. This is the Sports Bash 97.3 ESPN, the free mobile app. Download the app in the Apple Store, Google Play. It is free, thanks to First Bank of Sea Isle City. The Phillies have 38 games left. 30 of them are against losing teams, as we just chronicled with Bob Wankel. They have the easiest schedule in baseball the rest of the way, and it's not close. They play 440 teams the rest of the way. The Reds are next at 466, followed by the Nationals at 474 and the Pirates at 477. The White Sox, by the way, are next at 480. They're going to win that division. Man, the White Sox are going to win the Central. They are currently, 9.5 games up on Cleveland. The White Sox are going to win the Central by about 15 games, if not more. That division is putrid, dreadful, awful. Phillies have the easiest schedule in baseball the rest of the way. It's not even close. And we just talked about it with Bob. They have a big stretch coming up right after this series with the Tampa Bay Rays. The Rays are a team that the Phillies, obviously the Rays are the best team in the American League East. They are a team that gives the Phillies some problems. And after they play the Rays, okay, this is where the Phillies can start to make up on that. So if you're dejected, they're 5 games out. This is where they can start to make up a little bit of ground, all right? 4 with Arizona. Well, they just got swept by Arizona. The games are back home. Let's focus back up on the fact that they won against San Diego 2 out of 3. 3 against Washington, a bad baseball team. Miami always gives you troubles, 3 there. 3 against Milwaukee, a good baseball team. Colorado, a dreadful baseball team. So you got that stretch right there takes you to, you got Colorado, then the Cubs, another bad baseball team. The Cubs are a terrible team. They are 20 games under 500. You've got Washington, who's about 20 games under 500. You got Miami, who's about 20 games under 500. You've got Colorado, who's 10 games under 500. You've got Arizona, who's almost 40 games under. They are 42 and 83. They are 40 games under 500 almost. And you just got swept by a team that is 38 and a half games out of first place. That's bad. Now, Arizona has won 7 out of the last 10. Also on that stretch of games that you got coming up is the Mets, who have really struggled, and then Baltimore. Baltimore is almost, this is crazy, they are almost 50 games under 500. Baltimore is. So the Phillies have them on the schedule still, and then they play Atlanta. The only teams with winning records that are left on the Phillies slate is these 2 games against Tampa, 3 games against Milwaukee, and the 3 games against Atlanta. So you have a really good shot. Now let's take a look at Atlanta's slate, what they've got the rest of the way here. All right, you got that whole thing. The whole schedule for Atlanta here. Let's figure out what they've got left to go. Down the stretch, they come. They got a 5-game lead. All right. Now, Atlanta currently, as Mike McGarry brought up, they've got the Yankees, San Francisco, Los Angeles. So this stretch of games for them, 2, 5, and 8. So they got 8 games coming up against really good baseball teams. New York, I don't want to say New York's really good, but good enough. I mean, they've been playing a lot better baseball. They've won 9 out of 10. They are currently 4.5 games back. Where is New York now? Man, when I left, the Yankees were out. Now they're in the wild card and 2 games up. So they have really taken over in that spot. So the Yankees, the Giants, and the Dodgers is what Atlanta has coming up. Then they play at Colorado, Washington, Miami, Colorado. Then they play the Giants again, 4 at Arizona, the Padres for 3 with the Phillies, and the Mets. So their schedule is not the most daunting, but there are some interesting areas where they're going to have to navigate. So I think the Phillies at 5 back do have a shot to get back in the East race, obviously. But they can't lose games against the Arizonas of the world. That's your problem, right? Mike, how can you say that anything can happen with the White Sox? Remember, the Mets had, a 14-game lead going into September. That I agree with what you're saying, that, yeah, the White Sox, though, are a good baseball team. The Mets were not a good baseball team that year. In 2007, I think you're talking about, when they had that 7-game lead with 14 or so to play, and the Phillies overtook them. The White Sox are almost – you can make an argument that the White Sox could be a top 3 team in baseball. They're that good. Their bullpen is sick. Their bullpen is ridiculous. I would say right now, if I'm ranking the teams, I mean, the Giants have the most wins. I would say the Giants, the Dodgers, Rays, probably White Sox, Astros would be the 5. And then I guess the Yankees would probably be, don't forget Milwaukee, although Milwaukee beats up on a lot of bad teams in the Central. And you can make that argument for the White Sox, but I think the White Sox are actually pretty good. I think they're pretty good. So I would go with those teams. San Fran, the Dodgers. I'll go Tampa, Chicago, and Houston. They're probably, to me, the best 5 right now. 609-403-0973. So, yeah, I agree with what you're saying, text message guy. How can you say that anything – how can you say that? I think you forgot your comma. That's where I was a little thrown off there. How can you say that? And I'm not knocking you for it. I know it's a text message, so it's hard to get that in. But when I read it the way that I read it, it was a little confusing. But you said, how can you say that, comma? Anything can happen with the White Sox. Remember the Mets. Okay, so there you go. Yeah, no, I agree with you. Anything can happen. My prediction would be that the White Sox are going to beat the Indians, and they're not. The Indians are 9.5 back right now. Right? They're 9.5 back. And the White Sox schedule is one of the 5 easiest in baseball. So I don't see that collapse. McGarry brought it up earlier. Milwaukee's 7.5 up on Cincinnati. I think Cincinnati's done. Chicago is 9.5 up on Cleveland. I think Cleveland's done. Tampa's 4.5 up on the Yankees. I don't think the Yankees are out of this thing quite yet. They've made a boatload of trades that really improved that roster. I mean, it's nice to be able to have the ability to go, hey, we're not very good right now. All right, well, let me see what I can do for you. All right, let me go out there and trade for every guy, on top of the fact that we already signed Garrett Cole the year before. Well, that wasn't good enough. All right, let me go out and get Rizzo. We'll see how that works. I mean, it's just ridiculous, the resources that the Yankees have to be able to just go out there and do that, where the Rays can't go do what the Yankees just did. Are you kidding me? Can you imagine the Rays being like, hey, we need some help, so let's go out and get Anthony Rizzo, and who else did they get? Joey Gallo. I mean, come on. Can you imagine if the Rays could actually compete at that level and just add Joey Gallo and Anthony Rizzo? But, hey, they can, and that's why they're back in this thing. I thought the Yankees, before the trade deadline, were kind of out of the mix, and now they're back in the mix. So good for them. They made the deals to get that done, and now they're back into the mix here. So I think in the East, the Yankees are still alive. They're going to win the wild card. I think Boston is putt out of gas. You've got, so in the American League, it'll be Tampa, Chicago, Houston, Oakland, and New York. They'll be the teams that will make it. Tampa, Chicago, Houston, and the 2 wild card teams would be New York and Oakland. I think that's who will end up making it there. And in the National League, I think you'll have, I think you'll have Atlanta, Milwaukee, San Francisco, the Dodgers, and then you have one more wild card team. That would either be Philadelphia, San Diego, Cincinnati. That's your 3-team mix right there. 609-403-0973. 609-403-0973. Mike, if the Phillies did trade Rhys Hoskins, what do you think a good return would be? Who would you suggest they target? Now, that's a good question right there, sir. You know what? If the Phillies did trade Hoskins, a good return would be See, here, this is an interesting question from when it was at the trade deadline. Because at the trade deadline, what did the Phillies need? They needed pitching. They needed bullpen help. They needed starting pitching. Well, they made a trade, went out, got Gibson and Kennedy. Gibson's back next year. Kennedy is not. So what would a good return? This team needs younger talent. They need some minor league talent, but I would suggest that they need younger guys who are big league ready. So you would need to find a guy like Hoskins in that age range or a little younger than him. That's a really good question because it doesn't have a great answer. You're trading Hoskins because you want to change the complexity of the roster. You just want to shake up this roster that you said, okay, we've had this same roster here for 2 to 3 years, and we know it's only good enough to get us about 500. So you're trading as a change of, just a change of vibe almost. So to answer the question about what are you targeting, I think you're just targeting someone similar to Hoskins who just plays a different position. Right? Maybe an outfielder. You need a left fielder next year, unless you play Bohm there. You're going to need a center fielder. So you need a center fielder, you need a left fielder. You're going to need a third baseman. So those are the positions you would target. You're not going to get a shortstop, I wouldn't think, but you got DD signed for another year, and Bryce Stott is your top prospect, and he's a shortstop, unless you look at him as a second baseman. At second base, you got Segura signed for another year. You're not going to bring in another first baseman because you probably either use Bohm there or you would just keep Hoskins. So you're not going to trade Hoskins to get another first baseman, is my point. You could go the direction of saying, hey, we're going to trade Hoskins to get more pitching, but I think getting Gibson here has helped you add some depth to the rotation, but they still need a lot of younger arms. So that would be another one. So while it's a very good question, it doesn't have a great answer because when I was talking about trading Hoskins, it was at the trade deadline when they needed help in the rotation and in the bullpen. They got that at the trade deadline. Now, they're going to need bullpen help still because Kennedy's going to be gone. And you're going to have to refurbish your bullpen again. But if you were to put Hoskins on the block in the offseason, it would be to find a younger left fielder or a younger center fielder or a younger – see, the third baseman's tough. Are you going to go with Bohm again next year or are you going to stick him in the outfield? 609-573-3776. 609-573-3776. Let me go to Rob in Absecon. What's going on, Rob?
Hey, Mike, how you doing? 5 games out. I don't know how important these games start becoming in the beginning of September, but for Atlanta, they have a real test these next 8 games.
Yes.
You're talking about if they come out of this I guess it's 8 games.
They got the Yankees, Giants, and Dodgers coming up these next 8. Yep.
If they can go 500 or better, I think that kind of crushes the Phillies mentality a little bit. And I don't know if they can come back. But this games with Atlanta, for Atlanta, are really important just to see and to kind of gauge where they're at.
Yeah, and I would say this, Rob. You want to try? They play the Braves in the last week of September. They play them
September,
28, 29, 30. So the last week of the year, they play Philadelphia, and then they play the Mets. The Braves do. You have to be within 2 games of them in that last week of the season.
How great would that series be with Atlanta going, and you got a chance to take them?
Oh, it would be epic.
Meaningful baseball in September.
Hey, I'm hoping they get to the first Eagles game with meaningful baseball on the 12th. This is starting to fade away a little bit, but if they can get to that last series because Philly plays Atlanta, then Miami, and the Marlins have given the Phillies all sorts of problems, but you play Baltimore and Pittsburgh leading into that Braves series, so you should be able to get within about 2 games of them by the time they get to that September 28th.
Well, it felt like they had a grasp when they were in first place a couple of weeks. And then that Arizona series it was like popping a balloon.
Unbelievable, right? You're right, Robin. I appreciate the call, man. You're absolutely right about that. That Arizona series, and thankfully, I was not able to sit there and have to painfully watch those games. We kind of had it on, we were refreshing the phone and everything. But if I had to sit there and watch them lose that series in that moment, I mean, it would have been so frustrating to be on the radio at that week. But luckily, I'll give them credit that they picked up off the mat after getting swept, went to San Diego, won the first game, lost the second game in the fashion that they did, and then picked themselves up to win the game yesterday. I will give them credit for that. Look, I think this team is missing a lot of pieces. They are short in the bullpen. I think their lineup, I don't want to say stinks. It's just too inconsistent with Hoskins, a guy. You can't have a 240 guy hitting in the middle of your lineup. It's too inconsistent. They don't have a leadoff guy. They don't have that great number 2 guy. Real Muto has been disappointing this year. I think we can all agree on that, right? They're short at third base. Defensively, they're a terrible team. Somebody just texted in, Mike, Didi is cooked, right? I agree. Sadly, Didi is cooked. He was a clutch player. I really liked them signing him last year. I thought when they brought him back this year, that was a smart move. Unfortunately, they gave him 2 years. I thought just giving him 1 year would have been the way to go, just until Stott was ready, hopefully. And look, maybe Stott will be ready next year and Didi becomes a kind of a backup guy, or maybe they could trade him for a bag of peanuts in the offseason. But he's cooked. Galvis could be a very, very interesting piece to this whole puzzle, right? When Freddie Galvis comes back, and Bob said it could be this week, you get Freddie Galvis back. What are they going to do with him? I would imagine Galvis almost plays every single day, right? I think Galvis will play third half the time and short the other half. Against righties, I think you'll see Galvis and Didi, Galvis at third, Didi at short. And I wouldn't be surprised against lefties if Galvis plays short and gives Didi the day off. That Didi essentially becomes just a right-handed short hitter, a left-handed hitter against right-handed pitching at shortstop. I don't know what Galvis's splits are, how he hits left-handed pitching this year, but defensively, he is just far superior. I mean, it's not close. Galvis is far superior defensively. He's one of the best defensive shortstop in baseball. Now, Galvis this year is only hitting 231 himself, so, 247. Against lefties, Galvis is hitting 295 with 4 home runs. Actually, against righties, he's only hitting 228. He's actually hitting lefties. Oh, he actually is a switch hitter. My bad. Why did I think Galvis only hit left-handed? Galvis is a switch hitter. That changes the dynamics a little bit. He's obviously a better defensive player. I thought Galvis was strictly a left-handed hitter, though. But as a right-handed hitter, he is hitting 295. And as a left-handed hitter, he's hitting 228. Ironically enough, his power is better from the left side than it is the right side. So Galvis, I would imagine, against right-handed pitching, Galvis will play third. Against left-handed pitching, Galvis will play short. That would be the way that I would see it happening. Don't know that that is going to be the way they do it, but we shall see. I am Mike Gill. This is the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN, the free mobile app. And, of course, you can download the app in the Apple Store or Google Play, and it is free thanks to First Bank of Sea Isle City. And, of course, you can message us through the free mobile app. Just hit the Message Us button, and that message will come right to the 97.3 ESPN studios here, the Matt Blatt Kia studios. I am Mike Gill, and don't forget, coming up Friday night, it is the return of Eagles football. The third game of the preseason is back with Merrill Reese and Mike Quick here on 97.3 ESPN. That coverage begins at 6:30. Don't forget, Josh has game night coming up in just a little bit. Andy McNamara is here, and he will have all the latest on the NFL as they get ready for the final week of the preseason. It's this week right here on 97.3 ESPN. All right, don't forget, we got all that coming up and so much more. And don't forget also that this hour is brought to you by your Delaware Valley Acura dealers. For great deals on Acura's award-winning lineup, shop online, DelValAcuraDealers.com. When we come back, Jeff Kerr, CBS Sports, is here. We'll talk a little football. We'll get his thoughts on the Eagles' final preseason matchup, the NFC East. The football season is back, which means Jeff Kerr, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Rob Motti, Tuesdays and Thursdays. KC Joyner is back for One Thought on every game. That starts coming up. Casey's got a new venture. He's now working for The Athletic, so you can read all of Casey Joyner's stuff at The Athletic. He's going to be doing a weekly piece for the Philadelphia Inquirer as well. So we'll do a lot of NFL with Casey, as we always do. The football season is shaping up to be a good one here on the Sports Bash. Stick around. 5:27 on a Monday. Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN, the free mobile app. Don't forget, you can get the app for free in the Apple Store, Google Play. Jeff Kerr, CBS Sports is back as we are in the final week of the preseason here. Eagles and Jets on Friday night here on 97.3 ESPN. And Jeff has been covering the Eagles, of course, all season long. He'll be with us for 97.3 ESPN.com. Live coverage of the Eagles on Friday night begins at 6:30 with Merrill Reese and Mike Quick on the call. Jeff Kerr, welcome back, man. How you been?
Doing pretty good, Mike. Congratulations, by the way. Exciting week for you, huh?
It has been quite the week, man. It has been quite. It's actually longer than that. 10 days, I think I was in. By the way, I told the people there's a Eagles connection with Jamestown, New York. Do you know what it is?
Jamestown, New York. I have to. I probably won't know this on the spot, but the minute I get off the air, I'll think of this. It's
actually two.
Okay,
But
there's
one
two.
big one. One big one.
I really got to think about this.
All right, so here you go. I'll tell you what it is. All right.
All right. Yeah. Tell me what it is, so I don't waste the whole way.
Well, okay. There's two. The one is there's a bar in Jamestown called the Pub, and the guy who owns it was a former Eagle on the 1960 championship team. I can't remember what his name is. It's like McCusker or something to that effect. We had dinner there a couple of times, and they have all the Eagles memorabilia up in the place. The second one is head coach Nick Sirianni is from Jamestown, New York, and went to Jamestown High School.
I should have known that too, like right off the top of my head. I
didn't know that.
I thought Nick Sirianni was from around that area. So
it's Jim McCusker, by the way, is the player who played for the Eagles who owns the bar called the Pub. Sirianni. So I did not know this. So I'm up there. Now we go there, and a guy that I went to college with is from Jamestown, New York. So I reach out to the guy on Facebook. We met up the night that I got there. I haven't talked to the guy in 20 years, 25 years, I guess. I don't know. What year is it? No, it's probably 21 years. So we meet up at this pub, and he says, hey, Nick Sirianni's from Jamestown. And I said, are you kidding me? So, yeah, he is from Jamestown, New York. Apparently his brother's like the high school coach there and all this stuff. I had no idea. So let me ask you so far, Jeff Kerr, what have you thought of the job Nick Sirianni has done through 2 preseason games?
Well, this is what I think. And I've talked to a couple people on this already. John McMullen on Birds 365 was one of them. And I didn't think Nick Sirianni, I thought Nick Sirianni was putting a lot of pressure on himself for this team to show up week 1. Here's the problem. Is Nick Sirianni really making that decision? Is it Howie Roseman? Is Howie Roseman telling him not to play Jalen Hurts? Is Howie Roseman telling him to
so wait a second. Are you on board with this whole Hurts conspiracy theory?
Which one? I've heard a couple of them over the last couple of days.
Well, the fact that some people think that the Eagles kind of made up this whole stomach virus and that he never even went to the hospital. They just came up with something.
That's the one Josh and I were talking about Friday. I actually think he was sick. I really do. I do think he was sick. I didn't think he was going to play that much on Thursday night. I thought he was going to play maybe 2 series or so. I was hoping the quarter, but I didn't think that was going to happen. It did seem like though they had to adjust their plans on the fly. It just sucks for the fans that were actually there. But I will say this. I do think Howie Roseman has a lot to do with who plays and who doesn't.
Well, I think Sirianni suggested that on Sunday night, did he not? That we all, this is a collaborative effort. Everything we do.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, it is pretty much what he said. It's a collaborative effort. I'm going, well, who's the one making the final decision? The guy who's making the final roster, of course, Howard Roseman. So, again, I don't know. When I watch the Chiefs, and this may be me and my love for Andy Reid and the nostalgia Andy Reid brings, but something just makes me happy seeing the starters play the entire half of a preseason game. And I just wrote a story on this. Patrick Mahomes did not have to. He does not have to play in the preseason, but you understand why. His timing with Mecole Hardman was off. He was working on staying in the pocket, not flushing out. He made a couple mistakes in that game. I guarantee you on September 12th, he doesn't make as many mistakes. And this is why Patrick Mahomes has 32 touchdown passes and no interceptions in September.
Oh, I agree. Let me ask you, though, where do you feel about these joint practices and their role? Are they suitable substitutes for preseason games?
I think they are the way they run them. I mean, it's clearly they run first team versus first team in these practices. And from everything I gathered last week, the Eagles and Patriots really, how can I say, it was like a 12-round boxing match in those practices. Not like they were throwing punches or anything, but you know where I'm getting at, Mike. It felt like a real game situation. And Jalen Hurts, from what I was told, was the best of the quarterbacks between him, Cam Newton, Mac Jones. Not that we're saying Cam Newton's a good quarterback here, but Jalen Hurts and the Eagles offense outplayed the Patriots defense, and the Eagles defense outplayed the Patriots offense. So what fans got to see on television Thursday night wasn't what was going on during the practices. And I think it'll be the same way with the Jets this week, but I will say this. With 3 preseason games, you're not going to play a regular season game for, 17 days after 16 days because the game's Friday. So 16 days, I think you got to play your stars a bit because there's no 4th preseason game in there. And next week is pretty much all. There's no joint practices. There's no nothing. So I think you have to play your stars a little bit more with the team practices this week.
Do you anticipate that they will do that?
I don't think they will, but I'll say this, Mike. If Jalen Hurts plays a quarter, a little more than a quarter, I'll be satisfied. But I do think he should play a half. I don't think that's going to happen, obviously.
Yeah, I agree. I'm like when they – I don't agree with because Hurts didn't play that they sat the starting offensive line. Like, I don't understand why one had to, had to do with the other.
Yeah, I don't get that either. Like, why wouldn't you just let Joe Flacco kind of play with the first team and say, you know what, Joe, here you go. Just go play. Like, I get why Brandon Brooks plays the series and he's out. Makes sense. Lane Johnson coming off the injury, I get it. But Jordan Mailata needs to sit. Really? Like, Jason Kelsey, I get. Some of the guys on the defensive line I get, but yeah, I agree with you. I don't know why the whole first team offensive line just can't play a couple series, Mike. Yeah. It's really frustrating. Although I will say this, I'm glad Miles Sanders did get in. I was excited for that.
Yeah, let me ask you about the wide receiving situation and kind of get your overview of Fulgham, JJ Arcega-Whiteside, Quez Walker, like that group that's kind of fighting right now at the bottom half of the wide receiver room.
I'm a little worried Travis Fulgham's going to make this team. I really am. I put his stock down on Friday. The guy played 13 snaps, played mostly on special teams. Not good, Mike. That is not good at all. Like, he's battling for a roster spot instead of being a roster lock, which we all thought was going to be the case 3 weeks ago. Right. Now you have to wonder who's more valuable, him, J.J. Arcega-Whiteside on special teams? I mean, Arcega-Whiteside has more upside on special teams. He's played special teams. And Fulgham, I don't know. It just seems like he's all bark and no bite at this point.
Very frustrating because, we saw that 4 games, 4-game little sample size from him, and we thought maybe getting a wide receiver coach to kind of get his hands on him. Same with J.J. Arcega-Whiteside. We thought that maybe getting Sirianni here would pull out the best in him. It doesn't seem that that's happening, but is it happening for any of the guys? Or any of these guys that we saw last year improved?
Well, Wes Watkins is one, obviously. I think Jalen Reagor has improved, and from all accounts, from what I was told, he has improved. So there's 2 you got to look at. Obviously, Devonta Smith. Greg Ward, I think, will always be Greg Ward, but still, even if he improves a little bit, I still think they need to have a veteran in there. I think we were all banking on, though, what's Nick Sirianni and Aaron Moorhead going to do with Travis Fulgham, with J.J. Arcega-Whiteside. But again, you got to give them credit for Jalen Reagor and Wes Watkins, especially if they're going to be vital parts of your offense.
Hey, let me get your thoughts on Gannon and the defense. Do they need to show more, or are you not concerned yet with what we've seen? 35 points against the Patriots in the preseason. They played well against Pittsburgh, but were you concerned at all with what you saw Thursday night?
I'm not, no, because the defensive line didn't even play. The linebackers showed up. I mean, Eric Wilson had a good game. Alex Singleton had a good game. DJ Edwards had a good game. I'm really impressed with the linebackers in the secondary. I mean, no Steven Nelson. I think Steven Nelson didn't play. It's been a while. I know Darius Slay didn't play. But overall, no. I thought they played well against the Steelers. No, Steven Nelson did play in that game. My mistake. So, but again.
Not much.
Yeah, not much. Exactly. That's how little it was. So I'm not too concerned about it. I don't really think the defense needs to play on third. Honestly, Mike, the only one I really want to see play is Jalen Hurts because he is your quarterback. I don't want this kid rusty in his first game unless the Eagles are trying to sabotage his entire career before it even starts.
Mm-hmm. Andre Dillard, obviously still hurt, not ready to play, but team possibly taking calls there. Do you think there's anything to that?
I think he has some value because, let's face it, Mike, this is a left tackle deficient league. This is an offensive line deficient league. As bad as Matt Pryor looked Thursday night, some team will give the Eagles a draft pick for Matt Pryor. It won't be much, but it will be something. And I think the same thing would happen for Andre Dillard. Now, don't expect like a third or fourth round pick, but you can probably get a fifth for Andre Dillard. Here's the thing if I'm the Eagles, though. I wouldn't want to give him up. I would want to keep him as backup to Jordan Mailata and keep developing him and just tell Andre Dillard, hey, look, this year is another year of development for you. Get it. You're frustrated. You lost out on the job, but maybe he can become something. Mm-hmm. Who knows? I think they're better off holding on to him than they are getting rid of him.
All right, Jeff Kerr, CBS Sports. What's going on with Carson Wentz and that whole situation down in Indianapolis? Give us a little overview of what's happening with Wentz and the Colts.
So this is so weird with Indianapolis. It basically went from Carson Wentz was out 5 to 12 weeks, and then it progressed, obviously, 2 weeks. So it was like 2 to 8 weeks because, it was 3 weeks. I'm like, okay, yeah, you're following the same timetable. And, yeah, there was the outside chance he could be ready for week 1. I personally think they're rushing him. All of a sudden, he's back on the practice field today. And they announced it yesterday. He was going to come back on the practice field. And Zach Pascal said he looked great. I'm like, did you see him out there? That's pretty much what he said. And same thing with Jack Doyle. Jack Doyle was raving about it, how great he looked. And I'm like, guys, he was just out for individual period. And I get it. Wentz feels he's going to be ready for week 1. Frank Reich feels he's going to be ready for week 1. It looks like he is going to play week 1. I mean, it really does. We do seem to forget as much as I think they're rushing it. He does have 20 days, so he does have time. I think they should give him another week. Starting week 2. I know Eagles fans don't want to hear that, obviously, with the draft pick implications, but I don't know. It just seems like they're really trying to rush this again, and it feels like 28.
Well, if any quarterback situation in the NFL, that would be one where the drop-off from starter, we think anyway, we don't know what Wentz you're going to get. The backup situation there is a mess.
It's gruesome. Sam Ehlinger was terrible on Saturday night. Jacob Eason actually looks like he can run that team, but he's not Carson Wentz. And I don't know, Mike. I think that's why they're rushing him back. I think they know
exactly
there's no options available.
Agree. What's going on in Denver at quarterback?
Well, it does look like Teddy Bridgewater has the edge over Drew Lock, and I think Vic Fangio is going to name that starter sooner rather than later. He might even name it tonight or tomorrow, but it does look like Teddy Bridgewater is going to be a starter over Drew Lock, even though a lot of people there like Drew Lock. Teddy Bridgewater is just he's flat out outplayed him, and they gave up draft capital for him. And I think Bridgewater, at the very least, gives them a chance to win. I don't think he's that much of an upgrade. I'll say that, but he's better than Drew Lock. Drew Lock has been one of the worst quarterbacks in football last year, and I think he's improved, but not significantly. He worked with Peyton Manning in the offseason. To me, though, it's going to be Teddy Bridgewater. The Broncos really should have tried to get Aaron Rodgers.
There you go. What about what's happening in New Orleans?
Yeah. Well, we're going to find out a little bit more tonight. Now, Sean Payton did say he wants to name a guy by Saturday, and I'm not even sure he's going to start tonight. That's why I'm really intrigued about this game. Will it be Winston? Will it be Hill? I think because of the lack of receivers, I think they should run the ball a lot more, and I think Taysom Hill will help them with that. And they have had varying degrees of success with Taysom Hill last year. Their only loss was the Eagles game, and that kind of shell-shocked them. Taysom Hill played well in his 4 starts. I mean, he wasn't spectacular, but he wasn't terrible either. I don't think he's the future there, but I think for 2021, he's good enough. If they have better receivers, I would go with Jameis Winston, but for what they should do and the lack of weapons they have on the outside, I would go with Taysom Hill.
By the way, just moments ago, the Raiders released Rasul Douglas. Would you have any interest in bringing him back? Is he a fit?
I don't know. That'd be interesting. I don't think he does that well in man. I mean, obviously, we learned that over the years. So maybe back in the zone scheme as a veteran cornerback option. I think he's going to sign somewhere, obviously. I don't know. I thought he played pretty decent with Carolina last year. I think Eagles fans overhyped him a bit because he wasn't as good as he was in 2017. Let's be honest.
Well, he was one of those guys that would play. He'd make a play here and there, but then when anybody got hurt and he had to play extended minute. Look, I love Douglas. He's a West Virginia guy, but you can't start him. And he's one of them guys that can play a week.
Yeah, exactly. If you need a guy to fill in, he's your guy. I think he'd be good cornerback depth there, but it does seem like they really like Josiah Scott and Craig James. It seems
Okay.
like they're going to be the two.
Hey, what'd you think of McPherson the other night?
I didn't think he was that bad. I actually like the trial by fire. Like, he did get beat a lot, obviously. The Patriots picked on him, but I like how they put him at outside cornerback. I like how he got those valuable reps. And look, this was kind of like Leo Shepard and Sheldon Brown, their first preseason. They got beat a lot in 2002. They ended up being pretty decent cornerbacks. I'm not saying that, McPherson's going to be them. I don't think you should rely on a fourth-round pick to be your starting quarterback. That's why you got Steven Nelson in there. But I don't think McPherson's honestly going to play much this year. I think this year's going to be a developmental year for him. These preseason reps are valuable.
I just thought, and the one thing that I took was, hey, the guy will come up and tackle you, right? He's a physical guy that will come up and tackle. They needed him to tackle the other night the way their defensive front played in that game. All right, so Jeff Kerr, CBS Sports. Give me, obviously we'll have a couple more times to talk before they play on Friday night, and we'll find out more, I guess, if these guys will play. What about the running back situation? We haven't seen a whole heck of a lot there. How's that shaking out in your mind?
Well, Kenny Gainwell's stock is really going up, and I didn't put him in my stock up or stock down, even though I probably should have, because his stock is going up. I honestly think Kenny Gainwell has an excellent chance to be the number 2 running back on this team. And Boston Scott still has the edge, but Gainwell, he looked really good in that preseason game on Thursday night. He was catching the football. They were saying he has the best hands on the team, and I can't disagree with that. He could be like the Nyheim Hines in this offense, which would be very beneficial for the Eagles. So, I'm pretty high on Gainwell right now.
All right, Jeff Kerr, CBS Sports, Eagles Friday night against the Jets, final preseason game. And you can hear that game here on 97.3 ESPN. We'll have plenty more coverage of this Eagles offseason, getting ready for the season. And then, of course, the opener, September 12th, right here on 97.3 ESPN. Jeff Kerr with us all season long here on the Sports Bash. All right, Jeff, take care, pal.
Yep, sounds great. Great to have you back, Mike.
Good to see you too, man. All right, Jeff Kerr, CBS Sports. He'll be back on Wednesday's show. We'll talk to him then. And, of course, between now and then, we got plenty more Eagles and NFL. Phillies are back tomorrow against the Rays. We'll have plenty on that series coming up on tomorrow's show. Pete Thompson for a Tuesday with Thompson is back tomorrow. Also, Rob Motti will talk a little NFL and Eagles with us all season long on Tuesdays and Thursdays. He'll be here tomorrow. I'm Mike Hill. This is the Sports Bash. We'll wrap up the show. Andy McNamara joins Josh tonight on game night. And we will close up the show coming up next. Get ready to wrap up a Monday show. Good to have you with us. It's the Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN. I'm Mike Gill. It's a crazy time of the year when the football season is getting ready to start. Everybody getting their last, weeks of vacation and summer out of the way, and then football is here. We are back with football starting Friday night with the Eagles, and then college football will be here over the weekend and all that good stuff. The baseball season is in full swing with the pennant races coming down. Phillies 5-back. They'll play the Rays starting tomorrow. We'll be all over that as well. Over at 97.3 ESPN.com, check out my story on a summer of baseball, looking back at how the Atlantic Shore baseball team won the World Series. You can read all about that over at 97.3 ESPN.com. It kind of chronicles the 10-year period from 2011 when the first local team went to the World Series, and everything kind of how that team kind of jump-started the league and got its third ever World Series title over the weekend at the Babe Ruth World Series. So check out that story. A lot of thank yous in there, a lot of story about how the league got there, mentions a lot of the different tournaments that we've been in the past and all that kind of stuff. So check that out over on the website, 97.3ESPN.com. All right, closing out tonight's show, we just talked to Jeff Kerr, a couple quarterback battles, as he mentioned. Keep an eye on that Saints game tonight. I think it'll be Taysom Hill winning the job. We'll see. In the end, that one's a good one. He mentioned that Bridgewater seems to have the lead in the game, in the Broncos quarterback battle over there. That'll be something to keep an eye on as well. He mentioned how Andy Reid plays Patrick Mahomes a lot in the preseason and why he does that. And I agree. I don't have any problem with the players playing in the preseason. I really don't. But I also come to terms with they don't care about players playing in the preseason. So that is something to keep an eye on for Friday night. As we kind of get closer to that game, we should get a better feel on what Nick Sirianni might do. Now, we don't know much about Nick Sirianni. He has no path to go off of, right? There is no path or past that he can say, well, he doesn't play guys in this game or the second game, and he didn't play the third game and all that kind of stuff. So that's something to keep an eye on all week long here, is whether or not they will play the guys on Friday night in the final preseason game. My intuition would say they will not. I don't think you'll see those guys play. That's just kind of going off of what I heard from Nick Sirianni in the press conference last night when he was kind of asked about Jalen Hurts and whether or not he would end up playing or not. So that's my thought there. Phillies tomorrow, getting ready for the Rays. Big stretch. Phillies just cannot start losing series. They can't get swept like they did against the Rays. They can't lose 2 out of 3. They just have to kind of keep some pace and then gain a game here and a game there. And by the time they get to the Braves in the end of September, be in position to overtake them. I think you're going to see a lot of back and forth between both these teams. The Phillies have a very easy schedule. I don't think that means that, hey, they're going to just start whipping through the schedule. But it feels like the Phillies are going to stay in this thing all the way to the end of the year. And I hope they do. I really hope they do. What else do we got? As we mentioned, the Eagles non-committal on playing Jalen Hurts and the starters in the preseason final. That's over at 97.3 ESPN.com. Oh, Alec Bohm. That whole story there. We talked to Bob Wankel about that today and what the plans for Bohm might be moving forward. I think the Phillies will keep him at third base in the minor leagues with the possibility of bringing him back up when the rosters expand. He adds another bat off the bench. But defensively, they got to figure out what his future is. What are they going to do with Alec Bohm in the future? I think that is going to be really a big offseason story. And quite frankly, the whole DH thing. Is there a DH? Will there be a DH or not? That is something to keep an eye on moving forward as well. All right, game night is coming up next. Josh has, Andy McNamara tonight on game night. What else you got going on there?
Well, obviously, we'll talk some about the Phillies weekend. I'm still a little shocked they won 2 out of 3, considering they got swept by the Arizona Diamondbacks. But that's baseball for you, right?
Yeah.
And we'll talk some about the Eagles. I think that one of the things, like you said, this coming week is going to be interesting. what exactly comes out of these joint practices? Because if you believe the reports of all the media who was there last week, the Eagles won the joint practices in their one-on-ones. But even though they lost the game, all the general public saw. So, what happens with the Jets this week? The Jets are an inferior football team with also a new head coach, and they had 2 major injuries last week in their practices. So, does the week go well for the Eagles, or does the week go poorly? And Sirianni says, I have to play my guys in the preseason game. There's a lot of interesting variables to this. And, of course, as you mentioned, Andy McNamara is going to join us because, listen, we're getting close to the regular season, and you know what that means. We got to talk about fantasy football a little bit. We got to talk about the Eagles. We got to talk about his perspective on the league as well, because Andy joins us each week throughout the football season.
Yeah, I like Andy. He does a great job. So check out that tonight at 6:20. And also, don't forget, over at 97.3 ESPN.com, we'll have all the latest on what's going on with the Sixers offseason as well. The Ben Simmons videos.
Do you have Ben Simmons burnout already?
No, I don't get burned out by that kind of stuff. I'm actually intrigued by, to me, these people that get angry about it, I get it. It doesn't help him. I fully admit that. But people lose their bleep about it. Isn't there some intrigue as to, is this going to be the year that he just starts doing what he shows in these videos?
I think the point you made earlier is the point that I've also been making, which is, that this stuff doesn't get out there unless he approved it. It's not like it got out there by accident.
Yeah, I'd like to know who he's giving orders to say, hey, take videos of me and get them out there.
Yep.
Because at what point is the year that he says, you all doubted me, and this is what I'm going to do? You want to trade that guy? That's the whole thing. It's like the tightrope of, do I want to trade that guy and he comes out banging threes and shooting elbow jumpers? Then you're really screwed.
Yep.
Crazy stuff. I'm back tomorrow. Have a great night, everybody.